Oh,
There we
So,
go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Vito X DINO podcast. My name is Vito Delsante. His name is Dean Haspiel.
hi everybody, I'm Dean Haspiel.
This is episode 55, Dean.
Isn't that oh wait, who was the guy that took over Van Halen? Sammy Hagar?
yeah.
Hagar.
Didn't he have a song?
I can't drive 55.
Yeah.
I Can't Drive 55. There we go.
Our guest tonight is one of my oldest friends. I'd say I've known him almost 40 years,
That's right.
possibly just a little under. Was my former manager at Jim Hanley's Universe, which now becomes JHU a couple of years ago, under his ownership and stewardship with Ron Hill. Um, this is the best person to talk to, I think, about New York comics retailing and comic retailing in general. Right up there with a Brian Hibbs, right up there with geez, name them like any Joe Field,
Oh boy.
any retailer. I think you could talk to. This is one of the best to talk to, ladies and gentlemen. Nick Purpura.
Hi, everybody.
Yay! Whee! Nick, what's up,
Yeah.
man?
Again, I'm happy to be here. You guys, I've known Jesus Christ. I've known, like you said, Vito since we were children. And we're probably going on 25 to 30 years, me and you, Dino. I mean,
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
again, since Keyhole days, and we're going way back when you and Josh used to come in selling the comics at the store. It was
So we had
upfront.
I want to say we did like 4 or 5 mini comics, me and Josh,
Mhm.
and we might have sold those to you or whatever that was. Not commission. What's it called?
Consignment.
Confinement.
Consignment. And then we found a publisher, and that went through a few publishers, including
Mhm.
Top Shelf. So we were professionally published. And I do remember, like, the first time I got a comic book published, which I think was The Verdict #1 in
Ha!
1987. And I remember going to St. Mark's Comics and seeing my comic book on the wall. And I want to talk about this wall because I recently was at your store, and I found it to be very daunting. I want to talk to you about this. But to get onto the wall of a comic shop meant you were real at that point. That's what it
Of
felt like,
course.
you
Of
know?
course.
I
So,
think we all still feel that way, though. You
oh,
know.
totally.
I laughed when you said The Verdict because I found a copy of it the other day.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
Yeah. But listen, we get collections through the years, and so many of them are New York-based collections.
Right.
So
Right.
where New York writers and stuff, I'll get here's an odd one we'll bring up right from the get-go. New York Outlaws. New York Outlaws
I remember that.
that I got, and a guy was selling locally in Brooklyn, and I got when I was a teenager. Not less than a teenager. I was probably in grammar school that my grandfather got for me because he was in Brooklyn. So New York Outlaws did 2 issues, and I think the third issue might have come out in a small print run. But these guys were the first level of like handing out comics and doing these things.
Was it Ken Landgraf?
Yep.
Ken Landgraf. I
And
remember.
Ken worked with Gil Kane, worked over at Marvel, worked under Marie Severin. So he, I don't know if he got ever top-notch work, but he was doing assistant work. He was getting trained by Gil. So, geez, I know Gil's a crazy polarizing figure, but he's Gil Kane.
Yeah. No, I love Gil Kane's artwork.
At the top of his game, he's good. He's as good as anybody's ever drawn a comic book.
Absolutely.
When he didn't give a crap, sometimes some guys get tired. It's a long, long industry. We all get tired of this shit sometimes.
Yeah. No, I get it. And Ken Landgraf showed up. So I lived at 79th Street and Broadway, and I've mentioned previously how I'm not religious, but my church at the beginning of my comics reading career. It's not a job. Was the newsstand,
Yeah, of course.
and then it was in front of a synagogue, and I would go to the newsstand, and there'd be Marvel, DC, Archie. I never read Archie. Right. I read mostly Marvel, and then I noticed there was this weird black and white comic book with probably a color cover,
right?
Ken Landgraf, and it was very alternative, and it might have been the first
100%.
alternative. Yeah, it might have been the first alternative comic. Although down the block was what they call the head shop.
Oh, yeah.
Where you bought a drug paraphernalia? And I never went in there, but I'll bet you there was some R. Crumb comics.
If not that, there was Fat Freddy's Cat of Freak Brothers.
Exactly.
Because that was even the guys I knew in high school who didn't like a comic book were like, hey, man, did you see this? But they're not get off the Landgraf stuff. 10 years ago, the last 10 years, Floating World, I believe, will put those comics out again.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And they're something that somebody's suddenly interested in again. The small press, I'm just making my fucking comic guy. I did it, and it's kind of fun.
And there's a spirit to that when I was younger and I saw those comics, I felt, oh, these aren't up to snuff because
Oh, of
the
course
you
not.
know the anatomy is off or it
I
looks a
was
little,
ugly when I was a child. It was
but
an ugly item when I
it
was
was
a
an
child.
ugly item.
Yeah, right.
Now I truly appreciate it. Kind of like when Benjamin Marra, the cartoonist,
Yeah.
started to kind of like, pay homage, let's say, to those kind of comics, and I feel like Josh Bear published, what was
Wait,
it
I have
called?
to
Yeah.
stop you on this now.
All time comics.
Because if I got Vito here, and we're gonna get back to that because I love all those, the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
all-time
yeah,
comics
yeah.
are great. But now I have to tell JXU story that Vito is distinctly involved in. So
Yes.
Benjamin Marra, again, outside artist, he's getting some renown. Vito's doing some of the indie buying, and he buys Night Business 1 to 3, buys 15 copies. And I pick it up and I look at it and I go, the fuck are you buying 15 of these? Look at this fucking guy. It looks like a high school guy drew this. What the fuck are you doing? And he's like, I don't know. It was indie. He's very popular, blah, blah, blah. And it's one of those times you think you know everyone's taste when you don't know shit. Now, Benjamin Marra totally grew on me since that point. But I distinctly remember being Vito, like, why did you buy all these fucking
I'll tell
goddamn
you even
comics?
funnier
Look like
thing
a
of
high
no,
school
I'll tell you
drawing.
even funnier thing. First of all, his art always reminded me of like a very stiff, intentionally stiff Paul Galassi. By way
Yes, or a kid trying to draw like Paul
or
Galassi in 1977, right?
absolutely, or from the spirit of Ken Landgraf.
Right.
But when I was working on Bored to Death, the HBO show that Jonathan Ames
Yeah.
created and that I worked on,
Excellent
and
show. Is it still streaming?
I don't sure it's streaming on HBO, I assume.
If you haven't watched it, you
But
watched it.
oh wait, was it an H? Yeah, it was an HBO show.
HBO, yeah.
Anyway, so but at one point, the Zach Galifianakis character, Ray Houston, who is loosely based on me, and he's a cartoonist I did all the artwork for. They asked me, they said, what kind of comics would he be reading on the show? And it wasn't going to be a Marvel or DC.
Right.
They would make Wolverine jokes and everything like that.
Right.
But what comics was he reading? And I brought them Night Business.
Oh, that's
And
a
he
good
reads
one.
Night Business on the
Not
show.
remember that. No, it's perfect.
So, yeah. Anyway, but and that's funny because like, listen, we are all like Marvel and DC heads. Like we love those comics. I still love those comics, but like,
well, but remember,
I really, what
we are now. What I have to say, one of the things I'm noticing through my years of comics retail is we are now the old ones. So many kids come into comic books and don't give a shit about a Marvel and a DC.
That's right.
I think it's a real fruitful time to kind of do your indie work, especially non-superhero indie work, because superhero indie work, I think, is wonderful and good, and you can penetrate. But holy moly, what you're up against!
Absolutely.
One against a million.
I have a question for you, Nick. It's really, because when we were at the store a couple of weeks ago, and Dean was kind of like taking in, like, I think at one point he actually stopped me and goes, this is almost intimidating or something to that effect. How do you, and I think pertains to retailing in general, do you consider yourself a curator, and what makes a good curator of a comic store?
We always were, and I think all of the great comic stores are. That's one of the things, that Jim Hanley always would talk about was, Phil Boyle and Coliseum Comics knows what's best for Phil Boyle and Coliseum Comics.
Mm-hmm.
There was something, I want to say it was a mini comic called Shit and Piss that came out. And he's like, I can't carry this. I can't have this on my shelf that says the words shit and piss in the environment that I want. He's not wrong.
Mm-hmm. I'm
a New York store. I can have that.
Right.
You know what I mean? These are choices that you could make. I used to use the example for years because you remember in the big store when we were on 33rd, we had a huge NBM erotica section.
Yeah.
And when I can tell you that comics like Banana Games, which was about trans women, sex trans women, having very detailed sex, and that these comic books outsold Aquaman trades and things that like are worldwide renowned. Now,
Christian Zanier, I think his name.
Right, but these things could only happen in my store.
Yeah,
Phil's store in Florida can't have that. There'll be people with cameras and boycotting his store. Yeah. It's who you are and where you are. Now back to the store. Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was going to say, but actually, I would flip the question to be more like I would expect your comic shop, knowing you, to have the banana comic and the outlier stuff, and also I'm used to
Right.
it. So in
Right.
some ways,
Well,
like
again, it's
I grew up that way. But I guess the bigger question is, do you have to carry every Marvel and DC, or how do you
not
curate that?
anymore. Not anymore. You know, I held on to it a lot longer. And I think it was a mistake and detrimental to my company to do so. And one of the things I realized with the closing of the Manhattan store was getting, you know, when you get every bit of your stock in one place, which when we're having two stores, as long as I've worked there and when we had warehouses full of stuff, I'm talking Raiders of the Lost Ark style box rooms of comic books, you know, having everything in one place, you start noticing, especially since I've been doing the majority of the initial orders on items, you know, I've seen items where I've gotten the two copies, one for each store, and never sold them. And this is an indie comic. This is a Marvel and DC comic. There'll be a Marvel and DC where you go, nobody cared about, and I don't want to errantly pull out some title and go, oh, this was the one. But there was titles, and I found myself having new judgment calls on a couple of different ways. One, what did the comic sell before it was a trade? Now, you know the trade has way more life than any single issue comic can ever have. But was there general interest when it was on your stands? Did my customers look at that and go, I heard about this, I saw that, I saw it and grab it and it's gone? And, you know, that big point of knowing how to curate the store is talk to everybody. Meet the customers. They'll come in, you know, they'll come in for the big boy stuff. I don't need all the new kids who are coming in for absolute DC product, you know, don't need me to tell me that it's here in the store. They need me to tell about every other thing we have in the store. Right. It's always been a JXU hook, is that like, now you came in for this, but let us show you the world. And that's why sometimes like a thing like Walking Dead or Invincible penetrates enough that you get a kid in who's, hey, man, watching Invincible and there's this trade. Yeah, read these. You like Robert Kirkman, who does all these other books. Well, this is the publisher, Image, and they do all these books like this. Do you like science fiction? Do you like horror? Do you like, then it becomes genre, then it becomes, you know, and then the most important thing, and Vito knows this because he worked there all these years, what's the most important thing about a comic book? The writer and the artist. Doesn't matter. Swamp Thing was in the trash until Alan Moore comes on, Steve Bissette and these guys, and they transform it into a comic book we're still talking about years later. 5 issues before, it was a Muck Monster comic. And
so let me ask you, I feel like there's been so many what I call stunt comics or stunts that Marvel and DC pull, you know. Maybe the very first one was Crisis on Infinite Earths and then Secret Wars, right? The Marvel DC. But those were, I feel, legitimately stories that were trying to tell something. I mean, before that, there was superpowers, but I feel like
I will contest immediately that I totally agree with you about Crisis on Infinite Earths, because the idea was we got to update this. We're the old guard, and we got to make this happen. Here's the two hottest guys, because you got to remember it's the hottest book in that era of DC. It's New Teen Titans, and it's Marv and George. And we're bringing the best of the best to come forward with this, and that's what Crisis. Secret Wars was formed in an office where they had, you know, people to find out that the kids' two favorite words were secret and wars. And they were going to do a toy line, and they were going to, so this was a way. Now, Shooter was a genius. They hadn't had that comic. All the heroes fight all the villains. One of the most important things about comics in my mind is how you spin the trope. I've been reading comics for 40 years. Very often you can hit a storyline where I'm not like, oh my God, who the hell thought of that? Even Walking Dead, which is the most successful thing in the last 20 years, is a zombie story that goes, we don't end after they get out of the mall. When they get out of the mall in Night of the Living Dead, they get away in a helicopter. Well, there's still a zombie invasion. So where the fuck do they go? What do they do? And that was Kirkman's hook, and it worked, and it also penetrated at a time when that thing wasn't happening.
Yeah.
My favorite quote from him ever in the Comics Journal is, halfway through the interview, he goes, well, you're the zombie guy. I'm not the zombie guy. I saw a spot. If my pirate idea worked, you'd be calling me the pirate guy. And again, you're all creators. As someone who doesn't create in that version of storytelling, you know, you get to pick that thing and what's important about that thing, what that hook is, and how can that hook penetrate.
So speaking of hooks, and I use the word stunt or crossovers or
let's get back.
Like whatever. My question to you is, how, have they run out of idea? You know how they talk about movies? The movies are just sequels of other older
It's
movies or
diminishing
reboots, or
returns.
yeah, that kind
It's
of thing.
diminishing returns for years.
Right.
For every Civil War and modern Secret Wars, the Jonathan Hickman one, or even right now DCKO, which has blown it out of the water. They're blowing it out. They're doing stuff in DC Comics that's never been done before. When the DC final boss comes out and people see these characters fighting characters from around the universe, I don't want to spoil because the book isn't out yet, so I'm not going to do any revealing on the show.
They've shown covers though, so
you mention who you've seen, and who I've read the whole title. And in modern times, DC is like Image, like a lot of these things. Ordering has gotten somewhat easier in the fact that if you have and this is advice to every creator out there, if you have a PDF of this comic book that I can stare at before I order, for me, it makes all the difference in the world. Image
Absolutely.
titles, I can increase my increase of your book by 25 to 50% the minute I open the first page.
Right.
Because I look at the art and I go, I think I can sell this, or this
Right.
reminds me of this. Even if I despise an artist,
Right.
does everyone else love this artist? Because if they do, I'm it's not about me. It doesn't matter
Right.
what I like.
Is hand selling still a thing?
Like, more than ever.
Is it like it's like a lost art?
No, it's the crux of the comic store. Again, the only thing that we can ask from the outside world from a comic shop is for you to do something that gets a little buzz for someone to read about. You guys are on a podcast, right? You guys have set up a podcast, two fucking seasoned writers here that if people notice this, they go, hey, well, what's Vito's comics? What's Dino's comics? Well, Dino's, we talked about, we started talking about American Splendor. Well, let's go find those books. Let's go read those books. The penetration of it all is getting them in the store. Once we get them in the store, and again, Vito knows this one from the years of us working here, we have to find a way to keep you. It's more dangerous when someone comes in your store and buys one of every comic for 6 months, because they're going to burn out and go away. But if you get a customer who likes this, I like books. I mean, I like stories. I like art. You can have them for life.
So do you feel that, and I have not read any of the Absolute Batman comics yet, and I know there's a bunch of Absolute. Actually, is Martian Manhunter Absolute?
Yeah,
is that part of the, so I do have that.
And maybe as a retailer, my favorite of the bunch. But go ahead.
That's the one I've been getting because the artwork alone is awesome.
Absolutely.
But so do you feel like what happened is that DC did something really interesting in that it veered away from, we're going to do a crossover story, events, stunt, whatever you want to call it, and actually created what I almost consider an imprint of bootleg DC Comics in a way.
Yeah, I mean, again, DC had never done what Marvel has now gone to the well twice for, which was an ultimate universe where we're going, no, this is a totally different thing. Don't worry. Maybe they treat it, and not for nothing, DC invented it. Flash was a guy with a helmet until he wasn't, until he was Barry Allen. Green Lantern was this guy. And my favorite thing about DC, we could still have the guy with the helmet. And we could still have Alan Scott. You can have all these things. So they realized, I have to say, they sent a PDF out of Batman, Absolute Batman 1, and we saw it. Ronnie especially was like, this is special. Everything about, and as the one thing you love to see, Nick Dragotta, a lifetime comic artist who I always thought was good, leveled up. He leveled up. Something happened in his art career, because I've read many comics from him. They were all good. I've never read a Nick Dragotta comic was like, that doesn't look good. They were all good. He worked with Hickman, for East and West. Worked with Hickman during the FF when the FF was top of the barrel again. So he was the guy. I always thought that, but he put his all in the right book at the right time. I thought Batman was going to be the hardest one to penetrate because we've seen 1,000 Batmans. We see White Knight was a hit 3 years ago. They did years of White Knight because Sean Murphy had a great idea. He's an exceptional talent and put out a good book. But I think the flip of all this was, number one, and this is where it goes with kids all the time, kids are afraid of American comic books. They're daunting. If you decide you've heard of this character, Batman, which sounds hysterical to guys, us old men with all our gray in our fucking beards, but if you're first hearing about Batman, you go, I want to start in the beginning. Now, they just put out this week, DC Finest. It's the original Detective 27 run in a trade paperback, affordable price, $34.95. You can get it tomorrow. He's not going to be able to penetrate a golden age comic in 2026. So then he's got to jump somewhere into modern age where someone goes, oh, we'll read a Batman Year One, read a Batman Long Halloween, and this gets them in. But they're not at the beginning.
Right.
We all have our love for our 80s comic. We pick the one, All-Star Squadron or a New Mutants, where, no, I bought that off the
or we talk about, like, we use Spider-Man. Like, what was my Spider-Man? I think Ross Andrew drew my Spider-Man.
Yeah,
right. You know, like, and then Sal Buscema, you know, kind of.
Wow. See, what? And, you know, God bless our pal Sal forever, but Sal was a on-model character artist.
Yep.
You know, the way people yell about, and I love him too, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez being the vision of DC. Well, I think Sal's the one of Marvel. You know, Tim or Ramita, as much as we're both Kirby guys, the things you grew up, the play mats, the toy art, it all looked like Sal stuff.
Yeah,
you got a Marvel team up or a Marvel team up, and Sal was the guest artist. It looked exactly the way the comic's supposed to look.
So bear with me here, because I would hazard that at some point, and I'm going to use DC in the absolute line right now to discuss this, is because I want to get to Kickstarters at some point. But do you feel like that maybe this imprint, this, you know, like you said, it was even though they invented the alternative universe, they hadn't done that yet.
It was twice. A jump. It's a jumping on point.
It's a jumping on point as well. But do you think aesthetically, well, not just money wise, but aesthetically, that they're aping or mirroring a little bit of what the alternative comics have been doing for years now? When we were talking about, like, the alternative superhero, right? Whether it works or not.
Well, that yes and no, but what really worked and what made this thing the number one thing is Scott Snyder.
I was going to say.
He's editing this thing, and I saw him at one of the Luna retailer meetings, and it was, and I remember these from hearing these about when Marvel did some great stuff, the same pitch meetings of like, no, we're going to do this. Who's got the goods? And he said the mandate for the first, say, Absolute Wonder Woman was she can't be a princess from Themyscira. We can't do this anymore. It's the same old thing. Kelly Thompson comes with Princess from Hell. Okay, now we got something going. You know, it's one of the problems with comics, and good and bad, is there's a little of a good old boys club, kind of like you go pick, edit. Snyder went out and picked the best of the best. Found a couple of younger artists that needed maybe that kick up, but you know, it's all A-list on there. Because again, the joke of jokes was a year ago when DC wasn't selling well, I'll tell you damn well who wrote the best comic on DC. It was Kelly Thompson. She was writing Birds of Prey. The comic is one of the most readable comics on the stands. It doesn't sell like that, you know. But if you want to talk about a solid comic by a fantastic writer, it's Kelly Thompson. And proved it, because I'm selling more Absolute Wonder Womans than I'm selling of Amazing Spider-Man.
Wow.
Amazing Spider-Man should always be the number one title. It's good for Marvel Comics, and it should, in all rights, trounce a Wonder Woman title.
Do you think that you're an outlier, though, compared to the rest of the retailing industry, or is that...
Well, with the Absolutes?
Well, with that specific example, but also...
with Amazing? I don't know, because one of the things about you know, when I use Amazing as a title like that is there's so many legacies.
Yeah.
There's so many guys that are our age that's like, no, I only collect Amazing. And as a guy who looks at it as an all-time comic collector, and Dino's going to confirm this with himself, I buy Fantastic Four every month. I do. I do. Fantastic Four every month.
That's the one comic I always buy, no matter what.
19 cents, and I joke, and it's one of the things that's wrong with the industry right now is one of the reasons you guys like you and I don't buy a couple of our legacy titles forever is because you can't. You used to be able to buy an Uncanny X-Men and maybe another X-Men title, and those two X-Men would be all the X-Men you get in a month. You used to be able to buy Amazing Spider-Man. You could skip Spectacular. You could skip Web. You buy Amazing. You have to buy Amazing. Now those stories don't go in one complete book. That's why legacy collectors collect Daredevil. You know why? Because Daredevil gets one title. And it's easy to follow. It's easy to keep up with. And even if you run through 6 months of bad comics, you go, but I like Daredevil. I'll wait till the next guy gets on, or I'll see the story through. Now your choices are infinite. Your choices are infinite with the same product. You're infinitely. There's guys who come to my store and spend a considerable amount of money on just Spider-Man. They love it. It's their favorite character. I'm not knocking how people buy anything in my store ever. You enjoy, you collect the hobby the way you want to collect. If you want to put it in plastic cases, you do that. If you want to have a mint copy and never copy of one that goes under your bed the way I used to do it, that's not my choice. My choice is to provide you with the said comic. But this is the problem with penetration now. You and I can go, fuck it, it's $5. I can enjoy Fantastic Four even if I don't love this issue, this run, this team. But the need of doing that stops most people who already want to read the Marvel Universe. If you are a Marvel Universe fan, your whole life you were reading Daredevil, Captain America, Spider-Man, Hulk, Thor, X-Men, Avengers. You wanted to read everything. Your budget said you could have X amount. But you always were interested, and if you had extra budget that month, fuck it, let me buy Power Man and Iron Fist. I want to know, and the market is too crowded now for that to happen, and it's self-done. They're crowding themselves out of it.
Well, they're definitely, I think Marvel and DC are overproducing comics when really I think they should reduce their output, because at the end of the day, they're just making TV and movies now,
Well, not even that, they would sell more titles, because back to what I'm saying is people are interested in this. Back to an earlier part of this conversation, I'd rather sell 10 comics to a guy than a guy who's buying 100 every month. It seems like a great thing, and this guy's our best customer. But he's not, because in 6 months when he reads all the comics, I don't really like this so much. And I bought all these things, and these aren't worth anything, and this wasn't good, but I bought 6 of them, and I'm not going to buy more. All of a sudden, the hobby has to be fun. When people read a novel, they don't go, I'm going to stop reading novels now. Novels aren't good anymore. It only happens in our industry. Movies are stink now. I'm done with movies. I don't know what to tell you.
That's this never gonna happen.
There's the reading comics. There's collecting comics. And the goal for the guys like the three of us is, oh God, we need people to read them.
Well, there's also, I think comics create good comics can create an appetite and a hunger, right?
Of course.
To seek other things. Like you said, you could be reading Spider-Man, Batman, Fantastic Four, and suddenly you're like Power Man and Iron Fist, which doesn't exist anymore. But, right. I did that. Right. Carrie Gamble, Mary Jo Duffy, I remember jumping on to those comics. And, Dennis Cowan was drawing a couple of them and whatnot.
Fun.
And I remember, and I'm thinking, it created a hunger. And then I went alternative, right?
Right.
But now what we're talking about is the new reader that enters comics today never has to have ever read a Marvel or DC comic, But they don't have, I don't think, I can't name on my 5 fingers like 5 consistent alternative comics that come out monthly anymore.
I don't think it, well, that's also one of the problems is and I don't know where I stand on this, because we have now trained a much smarter and mature comic audience. So for the top image books, Fantagraphics books, things that have maybe like I Love and Rockets that are coming out and still in a pamphlet form, Mad Cave or any of these, cool indie titles. It's hard to, this is exactly what I'm getting with this. The penetrate. I don't even know what I'm going with this. You keep going. I'll come back.
Okay. Well, I mean, what I was starting to talk about is that I don't think that where I'm veering in 2026 and started in 2023 doing Kickstarters and stuff, because I'm veering into the independent self-publishers. Like, there's no way I could produce 12 issues of COVID Cop or the Red Hook or whatever.
That was what I was getting at.
And I think you were starting to talk about, maybe I was talking about the monthly and how there's maybe a handful. I don't think there's any monthly independent comic.
Well, there are some. There are. Well, no, I don't think there are that many.
Maybe webcomics. Webcomics are weekly.
One of the problems is, how labor intensive it is to draw a comic book. Right. So the whole original industry of that Marvel DC industry, well, it was a team of guys and handed off to the next guy, and we've matured that the artist wants to be the artist.
And the assembly line. We had the assembly line that made the comic.
It was part of the image awakening and the image realization. Was these guys came out of the image creators, the original image founders came out of the thing with the comics that their art was a notch up from what they were previously doing at Marvel. Mark Silvestri, I read those X-Men's monthly, and I loved them. And it was him and Dan Green, and I thought they were beautiful at the time. Cyberforce comes out, and it's this wonderfully, amazingly rendered comic book where you went, oh my God, this guy draws even better than I thought. But then he could never, ever keep a schedule.
Right.
And this was the lesson of the masters. The Buscemas, the Kirbys, every guy that we love, the Gil Kane, any guy you mention that era can draw better than we saw them draw that comic. But they understood the assignment, and they didn't look at this as the same precious item that we did. Not that they loved it any less. I would never.
Even we had Kurt Swan, Jim Aparo. They knew the assignment. They knew what to do with the assignment.
If you go get and if I might have to dig out the book and show it to you guys on camera, but there's a Vanguard book from years ago. Yeah, I have it over there. Kurt Swan, Life in Comics. And you see these pencils that this man can do that weren't comics and fully illustrated stuff. Kurt Swan's but no, Kurt Swan had to get 30-something pages done for both Superboy and Legion and maybe a 3-parter here. And he did the economy of what he could do to get it out because the monthly grind had to happen. It wasn't the thing. Once Image comes to the world and we go, well, do we have to put this out on monthly? Or we tried to put it out monthly, we just can't do it. Even Spawn, which is the godfather of them all, that's lasted and is still a selling comic book. Well, he got teams on it. He got Greg Capullo to draw all those years. He's got new guys drawing it, but it keeps it rolling. Now, back to your point, because you being a very singular style comic artist, it's not possible. So what you have to do is pull out the program, which is I'm either going to put out my 4 issues or 6 issues, have X amount in cans so you can have them out in a timely fashion is what matters right now in comics. Because you'll get lost. If you put issue 1 out and you put issue 2 out 4 months later, people are reading 10 more titles and they forgot they even bought your comic. It's in the bottom back of some box. If you do an original graphic novel, well, you can do that. You get it all out in one thing, but now that's all the load is on you, the creator. You've got to do a full work without making the money you need to make. And if you're independently publishing it, now you're putting even more money in it. So it brings us to probably where we're going to go with this, Kickstarter. And Kickstarter's real.
And then how does that work with retailers?
Listen, I've answered the Kickstarter answer, and it's not an easy answer for anyone involved in Kickstarter. First of all, let's get the disclaimer. I love Kickstarter. The only thing I wish Kickstarter would do is I wish Kickstarter would throw off every major publisher that's on there. That Skybound or an IDW. No, they don't need a Kickstart. They'll get the money. HasLab, any of that kind of stuff. Get it off of Kickstarter. I don't know if HasLab's on that.
I think it's their own thing.
You're right. I might be speaking there. But again, Archie tried it all those years ago when they got lambasted for it. And then years later, everyone else is doing it. And it's like, I understand the market. I understand without a diamond right now or all these things, if you put this $500 hardcover out, it's going to sit in a warehouse because stores are going to order one of each. I understand direct-to-sale customer stuff. You could even, me as a retailer, probably get stones thrown at me. But if you want to sell direct the $500 box set directly to customers, I understand that's kind of out of my wheelhouse. Maybe you should offer it to retailers after that. That's a whole nother argument.
Actually, if I could put I'm going to hear, but I actually had a conversation a week ago with not Kickstarter, but let's just say another prominent crowdfunding platform. And they told me that because they've been trying to woo me because I have about 3 or 4 books and or omnibuses that I could be creating a Dean Haspiel library, and I just hadn't pulled the trigger on it yet. And so they were looking at me to woo me to do this. And I said, well, how does it ultimately work? Do you have a way to get distributed and you act as a kind of de facto publisher of sorts, right? And they were like, well, this is what's going on. We are currently working with, and I won't say the publishers' names, but prominent alternative publishers, where the artist, let's say Vito, is putting out a book, and we serve the backers first. The backers get their, the mail to their home, and then we work with the prominent alternative publisher who does the mass market version. And they're okay with that. And I'm like, really? That's like, you've just sold to your core audience. But I but I did think, and then I want to hear your,
Yeah.
is I was like, but what is interesting is like, it is up to the publisher, if you're working with a publisher, to communicate and have a relationship with retailers
Of
that will then
course.
sell it to strangers, people who don't know who I or Vito is, you know,
Yeah, of
kind of a thing.
course. Well, again, I was going to get into all of my points on Kickstarter is one, the reason why we personally do not back enough of the retailer
Bundles or whatever they are.
bundles
Yeah.
is because there's no guarantee on when I'm getting my product. And I understand how hard it is for Kickstarter people to do this. I'm not saying this like, how dare you? But tying up capital is a problem. Joke of jokes, the one Kickstarter I probably backed besides one of you guys in the last 10 years was the Neil Gaiman and Colleen Duran Good Omens book, which I still haven't gotten.
Yeah.
And I know I follow Colleen. Colleen had been a guest at the store. I adore Colleen. I think she's an amazing artist. I think she's a just top-notch thing. And it's why even with all the things that happened with Neil, good or bad, I heard he was exonerated or not exonerated. I ain't getting into that. But I was happy to support her. Plus Terry Pratchett. It's Good Omens. Again, we're happy to get it. But I don't have my book.
Yeah.
I don't have my 10 books. And I have my money. And
Right.
There's a point that you started making earlier that I kind of want to get to, and you're saying something to the effect of maybe you specifically, but or might be broadly retailers, that you've trained the customer. Can we dive into that a little bit? Like, how does that work? Like, what do you mean, like in terms of product or in terms of availability or the culture of comics? Like, what exactly do you mean?
All of the above.
Okay.
You know, in the last Manhattan store, in our last little bunch of things, one of the things we added to, besides like to comics, toys, collectibles, we added the word fandom. And it's important because number one, this is the place for you. It's a place for you. Your first time you walking in, we're going to walk you through. If this is you come every week, we're going to know your name. We're going to know what you like. Number three, we're going to explain stupid. One of the things I do this all the time, and I talk to the guys who work for me and the guys who are in the store all the time. Comic culture guys who are in for a while. It goes for all of us, talking right now. We are wired to know a bunch of things that regular people don't know. FOCs and special orders, and B covers and C covers and D covers, and collecting artists and CGC and non-CGC and signed and who should get signed and what a COA is and does that matter? And, all of these things are just so overwhelming to someone who just walked in the door. So, I heard comics were cool. So when I train them, you got to show them around the store, explain to them what it is, walk them over. One of the things you ever want me to never go in your comic store again is for me to go, hey, I'm looking for this. And they just point their hand to over there. No, motherfucker, walk me over. I will walk because Dean made a light mention of it before, and we'll bring it back up. I was at your new comic section and my eyes exploded. Yeah. 240 items come out a week sometimes. 290 items come out a week.
It was so daunting to look at that. And I haven't been in a comic shop in a while because the comic shop I used to go to was in your store in Manhattan until you closed it. And so I've been to Forbidden Planet maybe once or twice. And then I order comics, thankfully, through mail order, which means I'm not going to the comic shop. So when me and Vito visited you 2 or 3 weeks ago in Staten Island, and I confronted that wall again, and it just seemed to have grown giant, and it's big, and there are 1,000 comics that are Marvel, DC, and not even dominant Marvel and DC. It was all kinds of comics, and I started to have this crisis of where do I fit on this wall.
Well, for us personally, and this is every shop does this their own way, and I don't criticize how anyone does this because it works for you, but we've always done, and Vito knows this one too, family order and alphabetical order. Because when I first started working,
and no new release rack,
right? And no new release rack. New release rack goes, why am I looking at these? These stink. You don't know what these are. Back to training your customer.
The other thing too is that a new release rack stops you there. It doesn't encourage you to walk.
Right. Well, it doesn't encourage you to walk the whole store. And then two, you don't know what you like. If you walk back past Harley Quinn and you see Harley Quinn versus Elvira, and you're the Elvira guy or gal, what is this? You didn't know. Back to what I'm saying. We all know about, did you look in previews? Did you look at your special order forms? Somebody just came in and wanted to buy a Godzilla comic, and there was one that said Starship Godzilla or Godzilla Heist, which I thought was a fantastic comic book.
Yeah. We kind of got into a little bit of Diamond over the year that we've been doing the podcast and like the fall of Diamond and what comes after and stuff. But you brought up something just now that makes me feel like maybe Diamond going away wasn't such a bad thing. When we were growing up, the three of us are roughly, I mean, Nick and I are only separated by a month in terms of our age.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, we didn't have a previews. And now there's no previews. So there is
we have the comics buyer's guide.
Yeah, you have the buyer's guide.
Yeah. But there's like
and eventually we
don't know what's coming out, and you can go in and just be like kind of like excited about discovery.
You joke about amazing. You joke about that amazing heroes and all them. I wouldn't buy them as a kid because that would be another comic. You know what I mean? Like, if I bought this catalog, I'm going to only read it once. They're going to come out next month. I'd thumb through it real quick if it was a cool cover or something. But the idea of cutting into my comic budget. But, there was
comic shop news. I remember how important comic shop news was.
Wow, comic shop news still comes out to this day.
Still comes out.
We just, at a point, it became an expense. They're $15 to $20 a bundle plus shipping on it. The only guys that ended up using the guys who really lamented were the much, much older guys. And I understood them lamenting because that's how they did it. But that back to if you want to keep it on target, stay on target, fucking stuff is that you train them. All right, dude, I'm going to show you. I know what you like. I have a guy named Jewel Graham who shops in the Staten Island store who wants every EC new volume from Dark Horse. And then he came in one day and he said, "Hey, Jewel, do you see this book called Cryptology from Tomorrow's Magazine?" "Oh, what's that?" "It's all horror. It's all horror. They do this." "Oh, I want 2 of each of every book." Well, again, this is how you make money and you keep the fan. This old guy doesn't know Tomorrow's Publishing until
when I worked at a restaurant for 2 or 3 years, you would get regular customers and you knew what they liked and you knew how to turn them on. It's the same kind of idea in some way, it's knowing your customers,
It's curious. Well, it's also. It doesn't even go for comics. It goes in life. It's customer service. Hello, how are you? I mean, not everybody's built for it. And there's times where I'm not, where I go, oh my God, I have to be wonderful and sweet and nice. Because if you're not, what the fuck are you there for?
Right.
At the end of the day, we used to do this time. You're at the comic shop.
Yeah.
I'm not digging a ditch. I'm not cleaning a sewer. I'm not, life gets hard and the customer gets frustrating or mean or outrageous or whatever, or some crazy local Newdorpian drunk comes walking in and you got to shove him out quietly. That's part of what, it's no different than anybody else going to work and going, "Oh, fuck my day."
That's the other thing I was going to say was the benefit of a comic store like JHU and a couple of others too that I've been to, when they're staffed by the same 4 or 5 people, they're open 7 days, 6 days a week, whatever it is. You do have that benefit of knowing who your customers are, as opposed to, and I don't want to say Midtown Comics because I don't know how they run,
right.
But when I would shop there, I didn't feel like they knew me. And I mean, again, that might have changed when I shopped there.
Oh, right. Again,
30 years ago,
listen, there's a reason why they're there still.
Right.
Always the thing with the comic stores. And Jim would always say, it's like, the more comic stores, the better. Mm-hmm. This used to be the thing of, like, I kept bringing up the Walking Dead thing. Suddenly for someone to walk past the store that they've walked past, we've been in the New Dorp area for the last 30 years. So if you walked up and down that block, we're there, but you haven't figured out a reason why you need to come in. Mm-hmm. Why do you need to come in? One of the things I put in the windows all the time is stuff like the Bluey books we carry and Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Dog Man, because mom's walking by. The first day we got the Golden books back in and we put the Golden books in the window, an old lady walked in. "Oh, you have these books?" "Yeah, she wants to buy something for her son, I don't know who it was, but they wanted a book.
I wanted to bring up, and because I need to, because you have retail expertise.
Right.
I'm going to use an example. I'll just use COVID Cop again, okay? Right. Because it's an outlier kind of comic. So when I decided to do that, and I just could not figure out why would I do a retailer bundle, because I won't make any money, and I know part of being in the store is optics,
Right.
and just pay to play even.
Right.
So I'll just do a couple of numbers, but I want to figure out how to get back into the store. There was
Well,
something that Brian Hibbs said to me recently. He was like, Dean, the last time you were on the spine of a book was Red Hook Volume 2 War Cry. And
right.
that was over 5 years ago. And a lot of the customers cycle out every 5 years. So
Yes.
I mean, I know you have a lot of old customers, and I'm an old customer,
Right.
right? But like, you probably have a lot of new customers that have never, put it this way, nobody's ever heard of me, and I was never a big name.
Right.
But if you read enough comics, you might have heard of me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So now I've disappeared, I've vanished, right? And now I'm doing these Kickstarter comics, and to use COVID Cop as an example, I'm charging on the Kickstarter $15 for the comic
Right.
plus shipping, right? And it's a 24-page comic that there's no way that if I put that comic in your store or any other comic shop and they picked it up and saw that it was a 24-page comic, that they would justifiably pay $15, right? But because it's online and it's part of this crowdfunding, and then I try to do the math. And again, we'll get to where you can respond and help me figure this out, which is, it costs maybe $3 a unit to print. Then there might be a packaging cost like of $1 or something like that. But you've already paid for the backers already paid for the shipping. So I'm making maybe $10 on that comic. But the minute I make it $15 and I give it to the retailer, was it $7 or $8, right?
Right.
Of that. So now I'm maybe making $1 or $2. It doesn't make sense. Plus the fact that the retailer now has to try to sell that 24-page comic for $15, and it ain't gonna happen, right? Unless I'm R. Crumb or something, So that's where I've hit a wall where I'm like, I don't know how to make a mass market comic.
My answer to that is to go back to, and I'm going to use another example after this, but to go back to the old early 90s, mid 90s way of publishing, which is publish all the Kickstarters you can get, keep amassing this material like you have been, and find ways to reprint the material in a new form. Because number one, and this is one of the things that I always felt like companies like Fantagraphics and Drawn Quarterly screwed the pooch on, was if you can sell a single issue comic book and you can sell it again, your fans want it. Evan Dorkin used to do the instant piano strips, and then those strips would end up in Dork or in a milk and cheese thing. So he's recycling the strips, but as a fan, well, no, Instant Piano was good because I got Steven, I got all 4 of them, but I liked that strip enough that I wanted that book. Oh, wait, that comic book is now going to be going to a Dork collection. I mean, the Eltingville Comic Book Club resurgence, crazy viral, random thing that happened, reinvigorated a lot of what Evan was doing. And again, the same back to you're saying, this is work that is 20 years old, even more on some of it, that's getting a new breathing life. Because people maybe don't know you, who aren't like industry guys like us, it's all fresh. Opposable Thumbs is fresh if you put it out again. Beef with Tomato was fresh. Beef with Tomato was one of your best-seller books in our store, and IPS was the distributor, and it was a pain in the ass to get into stores, and IPS did nothing, and still to this day does nothing real to get things in comic stores. They have Tony Shenton, who's an amazing rep, but it was a hard push. You had to get to a certain number to even get 45 off and to make the numbers work. But to go back to it, again, any repackaging of this work that you have that can be done by any of the publishers. I mean, one of the things I've noticed, and I'm, without doing any of those pushes, Massive Publishing is one of the few companies who went, I'll take your mini comics and sub-distribute them. Now, you again say your company is DINO Comics. DINO Comics' name won't be in, as your publisher name won't be out there, but you'll be in that Lunar catalog. You'll be in the catalog. And I guess to get to what Vito was saying before about Better or Worse Without Diamond, the current game in comic books is having your name in a catalog. And a catalog, if a Lunar Penguin Random House, means that every comic store at least sees your solicitation.
So are you aware of Power Pulp Comics?
Power Pulp Comics, not off the top of my head. I feel is that the guy? Is that the Kickstarter guys that are doing?
Well, the James and I forget the guy's name, Coates, their name is, and they do like they have published their own kind of like real outlier comics, and then they've been
A lot of Jim Rugg
also
books.
Oh,
and
okay.
and now Jim Rugg just joined up, and a bunch of other quote name.
All right.
A lot of outlier comics that like going back to the Ken Landgraf, Ben Mara
Right.
style,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
right.
that kind of stuff,
Right.
which is great.
Tom Fioli, right.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff. So, and I think Tom's in there and a bunch of people. So it's real outlier, and they approached me about, you know, and I talked to them. I'm like, well, you know, what's your cut? And they're like, we don't take a cut. We would just sell your comic and mail it. And I'm like, but wait a sec. I mean, of course, the person buying the comic on their site has paid for the shipping, but
Right.
they don't get any like for labor, you know. And I was like, that's going to backfire on you at some point, because
That's,
you're gonna
you
that's
can't work
ridiculous.
for free. It's got.
So I don't know how it's evolved, but I was wondering, like, and I know there's a retailer section on their website. Check out Power Pulp Comics, because I feel like they're growing, expanding, and it.
Well,
might
again,
be
there's
getting...
a space. There's a space right now for an indie distributor. And funny enough, I brought up Tony Shenton before. Tony Shenton was the hero of mini comics for the last 30 years, but he is now kind of graduated. He's a Scholastic rep. He's an Abrams rep. He's an IPS rep. He is doing some small publishers. I still buy lots of small publishers. Monica Gallagher, Colleen Frakes, the Sicoriacs, and then they still all go through Tony. And, you know, I joke of jokes. The year of unquotable Trump, we sold 450 unquotable Trump mini comics.
Wow.
That was our best side. It was a $5 comics. You can't even be like, oh, you only made $2. No. And then the graphic novel came out, and this is back to saying, and then I sold fucking hundreds of those. So, you know,
right.
That's the meat if you can make it happen. So
I'll tell you my allergy,
okay.
or my allergic reaction is not you. I love you, and you would push all my comics, however many I brought in the door, as best you could, right? It doesn't equal a sale necessarily, but you would do your best. My worry is that I think there's like 2,500 comics in stores in America or something like that, and I would say maybe 40 of them are like you.
I think it's a little more, but yes. And years ago, someone at Oni had talked to me, and was, you know, when we started doing stuff, when we ended up doing the Scott Pilgrim signings with them, and back when, you know, they had something cool going over there. And through the years of this, you know, there's been some great marketing ideas and great marketing plans to make this happen. But people need to, and then maybe the indie creators themselves need to do this a little more. And I'm sure a couple guys have amassed these things. Is who are the indie friendly stores? I like selling Marty Keane's comics. You know why I sell Marty Keane's comics? Because they sell. Everybody wants comic books that sell.
Well, also with Marty Keane, and I've talked to him about this as well. I think he jokingly, Vito, didn't he say he's not doing bootlegs anymore or whatever?
Yes,
or this is his last bootleg. But the bootlegs actually recommended his other comics, let's say.
Course.
So he did a really smart thing, a marketing thing, which was, I'm going to do a bootleg Spider-Man. I'm going to do 2 of those. I'm going to do a Batman and a Wolverine. And then
what else does this guy got? And that's how you get him. Remember training your customer? It's how you get him. Hey, and this guy does this stuff. Do you like his art? Now, my goal of the artist is, what's like Monty Keane? Hey, you might like Paul Pope. Hey, you might like, and you like a lush line, and you like science fiction. You like a little crazy. Here's Scud, this disposable assassin. Here's that's the goal of the comic. That, you know, the good comic shop can do that, and they're the only people that are going to hand sell an indie comic like yours.
Right.
You know, the other plan is to back to, and you alluded to there, is the library situation. You know, when guys have done as much work as you've done, how can I get this placed out that people want to see? Even if you're doing, you know, you can do what I call the Lulu effect. When the Dark Horse first put out the little Lulu stuff, they put out what they call their strongest material. So for argument's sake, let's say COVID Cop, Opposable Thumbs. If you don't know, I like your Opposable Thumbs. And blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And then book 2 is Dean Haspiel, the early years, and you do your keyholes and you maybe put the verdict in there and go, I know it had some warts, but I was, you know, I was 18, 19 years old, and I finished the fucking comic. You didn't, you know.
Right. Exactly.
That's how you kind of have to make those things kind of work. But, you know, repackaging what you have, and there's rooms for more massives out there or more groups. You know,
can you talk about Massive a little bit? Because I've heard Massive from a bunch of different people.
Publishes their own comic books, but they've picked up a bunch of small titles that they're putting sub-distributing. So I don't think he's taking too big of a cut out of the thing. But back to what, you know, back to the diamond thing, what diamond used to get, you guys know this, I'm in the catalog. So everybody at least gets the catalog. Now, I mean, David Prepost is great at this. David, I get emails for every new Space Ghost for your consideration. This is coming out. This is happening. Find your stores, your retailers, your people. You guys are both con guys. You've gone through the thing. Vito's got the Pittsburgh stores. These are all these guys. Anybody, Third Eye Comics, Maryland, any of these guys want to be involved. Brian Hibbs wants to be involved in indie comics. He's a specialist at the highest level. I mean, and that's how he can have a bookstore and not worry about Marvel DC publishers.
What are you looking for in terms of indie comic, self-published comic? What are you specifically, Nick Purpura, what are you looking for to consider it to be in the store?
I wish I had one here with me, but there's and I'm going to call it the wrong title. Hold on, I want to make sure I get the title right, because there's couple Dylan and God, I'm forgetting everyone's names right now. Dylan Klein. These guys have been kickstarting their own comic book, and Ronnie always says it when we look at it. This can 1,000% have been a brand new Starside. That's it, Starside Comics, and it's Dylan and Lane, and they're a writing couple, and these comics get kickstarted. They kickstart enough to distribute and bring to conventions and to bring with them. So when you're kickstarting, it was something that Atomic Robo used to do. I always talk to Powell about it. Is you baking in here X amount of copies that you're supplying yourself. Number one, that you are making a lot more profit because you're not mailing them out. And the ever famous, you guys know this, go to cons. I have to have a pile of shit, otherwise I'm an idiot standing there at the table. Want me to draw something? Want me to write something down? No, they want comic books. They want to sign the comic book. They want, even better, they want to get one with a slightly different cover. If your fan base is your fan base well enough, they like the variants. They like the this has got the this is this, or what extra can you put up in the same comic? If you, for argument's sake, you put COVID Cop in there, can you put a 3-page backup in this version of COVID Cop? COVID Cop with three new pages, a tie-up. Any of these things that makes a reason for someone to buy it again. Or, more importantly, unless you've sold 10 million copies, most of the times people are buying it for the first time.
So these are all great notes and ideas. My and we talked a little bit at the store, so I'm kind of repeating myself what we're doing on, so other people can hear. A couple of things. You've never published anything as a store.
This one again.
Would you ever consider publishing a comic book?
Yes, we would. But, and there's a huge but, and this was talked about years ago when we even had the big store, the timing and the capital's got to be right. Who was it that did it in God damn, I used to carry all their comics. And
floating something comics?
Well, I think I don't know if it was Floating World was initially. No, it was, oh my gosh.
And it was a retailer that published.
It was a retailer who was publishing mini comics for a while, and they did a good job on it. But one of the problems with
not Oily Comics that
was
Fox Brown was a part of.
No, not Oily. It was somebody.
And it was a Big Planet. Big Planet.
Yeah. Thank you. And they published some great comic books.
Yeah,
comic books. But you got to then be a publisher. You got to go hunt down your accounts payable. I love Big Planet. I was fucking late to them all the time. Because they're the smallest of invoices out of all your invoices. One of the problems with mini comics in general and self-publishing is that a comic store every week's got to worry about, it used to be the Diamond bill, now it's Penguin Random House Lunar bill, and your Scholastic bill, and your Abrams bill, and now the $10 I owe Vito. Oh, fuck, I'll get a Vito next week.
Right.
And Big Planet, you're a store, you want to be running the store enough is enough of a hassle. Do I think it'd be a fun idea? Yes, I would. I also would have to make sure that I had myself in a catalog. You know what I'm saying? That's part of the thing. Could you try to sell it as an imprint to a smaller publisher? Maybe. I love the guys over at Image. I love Alex. Could I pitch it to Alex? I would hope. Would he take it? Probably not. But who knows? You never know. As always, and you know this better than anyone, is can your pitch penetrate? Does your pitch make everybody in the room go, yeah, I'm behind it. Let's do it. Now it's us. Let's go. That's
So
like
going back to
I was gonna say, I feel like we came close to being not a publisher, but some kind of retailer of our own when we did the Love and Rocket shirts, the JHU Love and Rocket shirts.
Well,
I remember everybody wanted one at that point.
well, that's the hook of those kind of things, and you can do those things once or twice. You can do it with permission. God bless. That's a Jim Hanley moment where I always did. Jim and Rory were the two guys that seemed to be able to do anything in the industry and go, oh, it's okay, right? And everyone goes, oh, it's them, I don't know if me and Ron, they would be like, listen, you MFers,
What do you feel in your reading habits and what you're noticing it's being published is, and going a little bit back to the Absolute Batman, and I'm trying to make a connection to it appeals to maybe more of the bootleg / alternative superhero comic book reader. What do you think the culture of comics, where is it veered? Where's it going? Not the Marvel movies, which is, still poaching the stories that we all grew up with, basically, and then modernizing them in some way,
Well, remember, they bought, Warner Brothers and Disney bought IP farms with tons and tons of paid for material. I'm not even criticizing them. You have 1,000 issues of Fantastic Four to go through. 1,000 to make one story. There's got to be some good in there. I laughed about it. Well, a couple of years ago, I did a Daredevil reread. Every once in a while, I become a lunatic and read something from the beginning. And, till Frank Miller takes over the book, the exception of about 10 or 12 issues, the comic book is almost unreadable from 1 to 158 till somebody figures it out.
Right.
And it's, a tour de force for the next 15 years because now they figured it out. We've got a schedule, and it's, back to the Swamp Thing. The right writer and artist does everything. What you do is a different animal because you're penetrating with an original idea. And we live in the most wonderful generation where 3 idiots can be digitally in 3 different rooms discussing comics and all this stuff, but who will watch and who will read? Everyone can put out their comic book, their songs, their movie. You can make it all now. It's just harder than ever to penetrate. Back to what you're saying, I think to keep a little bit on point is to figure out exactly what your next design is going to be. This is what I want to do. This is my push for the year. This is my thing, and try to find those with people in the industry with like
All right, so with that in mind, I have been thinking about what makes sense, since I'm not producing 12 issues of something for the comic shop at a reasonable price, and I'm showing up once in a blue, kind of like with my artisanal comic or whatever the hell you want to call it, my luxury item that's a little quote overpriced, but it's what it costs you to buy me. In other words, the customer to buy a new Dean Haswell comic. And I am thinking one-shots and anthologies, something that you don't feel like, oh, this is issue number 9 or 327.
Well, that's why it stays on the shelf in a store like mine and in stores around the country. That's a better bet, because when the Crumbs Tales of Paranoia come out, we don't go, oh, the month's over, got to put in the bags and boards. You put a Crumbs section. You can go in the Dean Haspiel section, in the indie section under, say it's called, COVID Cop, under C. Doesn't have to come out. The one shot, the numbering system is archaic and works for a situation. The number one doesn't mean what it once meant. One in 1,000 become the special number one, the Absolute Batman 1. The rest of them are name the title number 1. It doesn't matter. But a one shot is this thing. It can be read at all times, especially if the intention is not to put another one immediately out. Because if you put number 1 out, everyone goes, where's number 2?
I think of the Paris Review, or some kind of 3 or 4 times a year kind of effort that doesn't denote it by number but by season. Like spring, fall, it doesn't matter anymore at that point,
I thought a similar situation for years where comic books should do that. Fantastic Four 2025 1 to 12, 2026 1 to 12. What are we doing? Because you're renumbering and then going to pretend like it's 1,000 again soon. It'll be
Right.
1500, and it'll be. And again,
Right.
I think now in this day and age, and it was the same problem '80s kids had with DC comic books, is you feel like you're too far gone if you're reading a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
You're a 12-year-old, and it's Amazing Spider-Man 1000, and you got to read 999 of these,
Mm-hmm.
and that wouldn't even be all of them.
Yeah, no, it's too much. Let me ask you, guys, did you see the news? I think it was today or yesterday that Eisner is for sale.
I was going to bring that up.
I did not.
Yeah, his family, I think his nephew and his nephew's wife, they are the curators of his estate, and it covers the Spirit, it covers the graphic novels, it covers a Spirit book that was never published, and they're shopping the rights.
Well, I mean, they are the heirs, and that is their right. It's the law of the land. It's a little sad, but
does the Spirit mean anything to a modern reader, though? Like,
no,
that's a question.
No. Now me and Ronnie have this discussion all the time: is when is it the quote end of these characters?
Mm-hmm.
Lone Ranger. What can we do with Lone Ranger? We're on the last tail ends of Tarzan. As someone who adores Tarzan, I love it. It's my favorite novels of all time. I adore Tarzan. But they did the last. They did the same thing with Lone Ranger. They did those last big bombs. Who wants to be in this business anymore? Do kids like Westerns? Do kids like jungle comics? I don't know if they do, but if the modern writers and artists or filmmakers or whoever can be can't make it penetrate, maybe it's time it's gone. And I don't want it to be gone because, again, I love Tarzan. I have a Tarzan statue over there. It's one of the few.
You got me a Tarzan. I think the first Tarzan novel for a birthday one year.
It's one of my favorite books of all time. No one's ever adapted it properly.
I think that like certain genres cycle in and out every 20 years. I think
I agree.
There's a famous story where Clint Eastwood bought what's his name? Something Webb Peoples' script called The Unforgiven.
Melvin Van Peebles?
David, not Van Peebles, but Webb Peoples, something like. Anyway, the writer. And he was a young writer, and he's so excited because Clint Eastwood was going to make his Western, and Clint Eastwood put it in a drawer for 15 years so he could get old enough to play that character. At a time when he put it out, where there were no Westerns, nobody was talking about Westerns, and it was, as you always say, Nick, if you have the right writer and artist, in this case,
absolutely
director, actor, writer, and it kicks ass.
But I think in the case of Unforgiven, that's an original story. I think to my point. Can we do something with Lone Ranger? It's not Westerns. Right. Westerns can happen 100 times over. You're right. Somebody can do someone can do a new jungle comic and it works. But Tarzan?
The dumbest question popped in my head today, and I was going to post it on Facebook, and it was, what is the best Ghost Rider story? Because I don't think there is one. I don't like it, not that I don't have a dog in that race. I enjoy the visual of the character, but I cannot for the life of me think of the one Ghost Rider story that I was like, oh my God, that thing changed my life.
It was a liberating time in the 70s where Marvel could have monsters and blood and Satan again. So I think that is the main thing that gets people to Ghost Rider. Yeah. I also can't post from the original series as a great thing, except towards the end where they kind of like did what they didn't always do, was explain that there was a demon and this demon possessed him and trying to free himself from hell. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's lots of beloved 90s stuff, but I haven't really read a lot of that.
Yeah. But I mean, to your point,
again, motorcycles are flaming motorcycles. Is that when are motorcycles in that kind of 70s exploitation, Evel Knievel thing that we all grew up on? Will that ever come back?
I mean, Sturgis happens once a year, but who cares?
But then the Sturgis, but I mean,
it may not be a discussion point, motorcycles, but I think motorcycles like leather jackets are probably evergreen. I think they'll always be.
100%. Yeah. But I'm talking the monster on the motorcycle was a very 70s moment. Monsters will always be around. A motorcycle will always be around. Some guy will make a Fast and Furious and guy will jump off of something in a crazy motorcycle. It'll look great.
Sure.
One of the great designs of Ghost Rider is just the visual.
I think what makes Tarzan. We were talking about the word legacy, and I remember Alan Moore once said something. What makes a legacy character? And he said, when they have their death story. and they have an ending, then they have a legacy because they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I think he said that about Sherlock Holmes and Tarzan. And I don't know if Tarzan died, but he said maybe if he did die, then you can literally be able to put him in a box,
right?
Kind of in a way,
full form to it.
You get the full form to it. And so you're right. Like, what if someone was to make a Tarzan movie today? What is that supposed to be? And we can joke about it.
How does it speak to the audience? Because I think
this
is what you're getting to here is, you're both of you are lifetime creators here. How do we get this work to more people, and how do we get people to notice it? And with the Lone Ranger, they tried a Johnny Depp kind of cool thing, and it didn't work. Can it work? Of course, I think everything eventually could work with the right creative team.
With the right creative team can figure it out. I do think that if it's necessary, or is it okay that is anybody doing anything with Doc Savage? No.
Well, the other thing becomes one of those. Well, isn't it time for our new heroes? And that always becomes the spirit of. I think that's the spirit of the youth movement with comics today, going back to your absolute period.
It's also the spirit of what I think me and Vito and the likes of us are picking up that baton of the things that we loved as a kid. They're trying to capture that energy and that spirit and put it into our work, but with the new, in other words.
Cool. Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Kids want, they want their thing. That's why the manga thing worked so well. Manga worked. You said, hey, I think I like this thing, Pluto. Pluto's 8 books. There it is. You read the books. You're in. You're in the know. My Hero Academia. All right, I started volume. Where do I start? I started volume 1 of this book, and 25 is coming out next week, or 28 is coming out next week, and they know I can become part of the group.
Vito, did you say Bone?
Did I say Bone?
Bone, like Jeff Smith's Bone? Because I remember Jeff Smith told me that when he had 10 books, he was set because it was library. The libraries would take it. Kids could read the first one in 10 minutes and be like, "Where's the next one?" And there was a next one, and there were 10 of them, and then there were more.
When it's finished, it's akin to syndication.
Right.
Have a TV show. Your TV show is successful. It's really successful at season 3 when I can sell it to Fox or somebody else, and they can show it while we still make more. And now we can make a DVD set, which is the graphic novel, and
right.
And accordingly,
it's the same argument for Walking Dead and Invincible to a lesser degree, I think.
Just remember, he's been printing for the last 10 years again, Walking Dead in color, issue by issue.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So he's selling it for the umpteenth time. I will say it once, I say it 1,000 times. The greatest modern publisher of comics is not Image Comics. It is Robert Kirkman. His book design, his availability to every kind of format, from cheap to expensive to the most expensive, signed and numbered, and they're all available. That's
I will say this though, but with the help of a very successful television show. I mean,
if there was no show, he would have at least had a finished graphic novel series that would have still made him a multi-thousandaire. A very happy multi-thousandaire. Before the show was going, we were still selling those trades hand over fist. He got to 25. So 25 successful selling trades broken into 12 successful hardcover trades, broken into 4 compendiums, which again became the most cost-effective thing. Comics are expensive. They are a luxury item. Not everyone can afford comics, but for a mere $240, you can own 142 Walking Deads, binge them like there were DVDs in compendiums, and have every single thing and be up to date in a week. As fast as you can read, you could be up to date.
No, I mean, Robert Kirkman is someone to be admired. Absolutely.
And he didn't do it once, he did it twice.
Yeah.
Invincible's a success right now. I'm selling 3 compendiums, 25 books of that, 12 books of this. And then when you back to the training your customer, they come in and now they're reading Invincible. Have you read Walking Dead? You know he does this thing called Die, Die, Die. You know he does this thing called The Occult. That was on Showtime. Do you know he does this thing? Oh, Battle Beast is this new expansion from Invincible. You don't know about this yet. He's giving me the means to sell his product.
So what's the lesson? Like, I mean, obviously I can't, I don't want to use Stray as an example, but I think it's the only example I can really use. Like, The story that's going on right now is still ongoing. Um, I'm trying to rush out, not in a sense of like of hacking it out, but trying to get this uh one shot done and put out and stuff. What is the example that I should be following as a publisher, as a creator, as a
Well, a timely function on it, meaning if argument's sake you got to publish Stray once a year, well then you publish it once a year. But October's Stray month. What? It's Stray month. This is when Stray comes out. You know Stray comes out because every year it's this month.
right?
Two, you've got trade paperbacks. You did that. Find a new way for someone to repackage it. Find
Working
someone
on it.
That's what I'm saying. Find someone to make a new look with a new cover with a new thing, because people that don't know it's not brand new.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
brand
that's a
new
good
to
point.
them.
Yeah,
It's
I didn't
brand
think
new
of
to
that.
them. And remember, at Jim Shooter, everybody's comic is their first comic. If you walked into this place and you say, "Hey, I like that. I like the way that character looks. Oh, it's cool. The bone in his hand looks fucking awesome. What's the dope? Who's the Doberman? What the fuck does that mean?" Any of these things are fill-in spots for why people should like it. But how do you then get the promotion out of there? Well, you got to figure out how and when, and then packaging. Again, this guy went and put a trade paperback out for 1 to 6 when Walking Dead issue 7 came out. Still a stroke of genius to people. Still, some were smart enough to follow, and others are still too stupid to figure out.
And when the trade came out, number 7 came out like that week or the week
That
after. I
the
remember.
same day.
Yeah.
So if you went home and everyone was talking about this book, you read that trade, you can come in and buy 7 tomorrow. And now you're in. Because remember, that's part of entertainment at all levels. It doesn't matter what you're in. You're in. I know. I'm in the know. I'm reading. I'm enjoying. I'm up to date. I love this. Can't wait for the next one. And then there's, again, publishing. We talked about a trade. Can you get someone to publish a trade? Can we talk them into doing the digest size? You've already made or lost your money on any of your old book, So can they put out a $9.95 compact style like what DC is doing right now? You know what $9.95 means to a kid right now? Fuck it, I'll try it. You know how many books? You know how many books the kids have not tried before that I could hand to them because it's $10.
Yeah.
It's less than a movie now. And that's the thing comic creators and comic companies have forgot is comics used to be the cheap alternative.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's hard. It's hard to be cheap because you all have to eat. You all have to figure out how to feed families and do all these things and be a creator. But there has to be an intrinsic value to the item you're getting.
So Dean had sent us both a link to an article in Tripwire about Summit Publishing, I think.
Yeah, I saw that.
With their new book Pinnacle, and I mean it looks good. I have no compunctions there, but is there room for yet another comic book company that's doing a shared universe kind of superhero stuff, or is
only if the creators can break out? It's not, it's what your hook is. You got, if you're doing superheroes, man, you gotta have a hook past I'm the best guy in town. Or I'm the most righteous to be righteous because being a hero is the right thing to do to be a hero.
Right.
Because they can get that. They can get that 10 times over, and they can get that with familiarity. People love familiarity. So they're much more akin to buy this month's Amazing Spider-Man comic book then.
Do you think it's like this is for the old heads like us? Do you think it's kind of like an Atlas versus a Marvel thing? Where all these little companies are spinning up and they're
yes, but the other thing is, and it was something that when Valiant was pumping a couple of years, about 10 years ago now, it was an alternative for the guys who were sick of Spidey. There's only so many times Spidey and Green Goblin can fight. You wonder who's going to win. But in your comic, and that was the Invincible tale, what was the hook of Invincible? He does sleep with the girlfriend. He does tell her who she is. He does get beat up. He does accidentally kill somebody. All these things are happening that could never happen in a traditional comic book.
Yeah.
So there's a hook now. Because otherwise, I remember when Invincible was coming out, and I don't mean this because I like Ryan Otley a lot, especially more now that comic is done. But at the time, I felt like it was that weird, this looks like every other superhero. They're amalgams, kind of. I'm Omni-Man's fake Superman. I don't know. But every time, I wouldn't read it monthly, and every time the trade would come out, I'd go, why am I still reading this? And I'd finish the trade, and I'd be like, holy fuck, that's why I'm still reading this. And on the visual on the outside wasn't what I generally liked, but those hooks kept me reading. What the hell? He just ripped her head off. What the fuck? That wasn't supposed to happen, It didn't do the thing that every other Marvel comic has to do, and that's Marvel Comics' biggest problem right now. They have no bravery. There's no moment where you're going, "Ooh, that's that's risque." When I say risque, I don't mean bullshit, blood and guts and what have you.
Like
no, it's a bold move.
What is it, a red band now or something?
Yeah, you know, nah. Well,
You know, I think that the best Marvel writer and artist is today.
Who's that?
Eric Larson, Savage Dragon.
Well, listen, you don't have to sell me on Eric Larson, man. It's what Eric's in that level for me of I dropped off somewhere on Savage Dragon, but I am going to finish that comic book. And I'm going to do it because I respect the fuck out of every guy who walked out of Marvel in the Image days and said, I just want to make my comic book. He kept the faith. All these years, he kept the faith. I want to make my, and again, I won't say anything bad about Todd because Todd's a mogul of the highest level. You can't expect him to sit at the drawing board as he creates toy companies and multimedia things. I'll give Todd a break. But Eric wanted to draw his comic. And Eric draws his fucking comic. I mean, there was a couple of months where he decided it was going to be an adult comic for about 6 months.
I loved it.
Oh, again, my face to the ground because it was one of those. It wasn't like, oh, there's going to be some boobies and maybe some sex. It was like,
no, it was insanity. I love it. And so when you just said that Marvel isn't brave enough, that's the first thing into my mind were those comics that Eric Larson did. Right. In fact, there was news today. I forget the name of his. I have it up as a link. They just announced Quentin Tarantino, his new Beverly Cinema Theater that he owns, you know, where he shows a lot of old cool movies and whatnot, is going back to its porno roots this February, and it's gonna start showing old school porno films and whatnot.
Oh my god! Well, at least those had stories. Yeah, I mean, again,
there's narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my god!
But I do think But you said red band.
I'm so glad nobody heard what I just said.
Wait, what'd you say? What'd you say?
I said her clitoris is in her throat.
Oh, stop! Oh, deep throat.
Yes.
One of the best.
Spoiler
ever.
Spoiler. Between that and a sled, right? And yeah.
What were you asking?
No, I was gonna say like how there's Scholastic. There's YA. There's manga. There's definitely ton of books for young new readers. But do you think for the quote, we've been using the term old heads, do you think that really is just getting to adult version of these comics more than ever? Do you think that would do
well no sell? I think the adult end of that thing is that long standing, and I don't envy Marvel and DC for this one, you know, PG-13 kind of thing that goes on. That video games are rougher than ever, and I'm not condemning them. I'm saying that like the violence is upped in the average thing that the Spider-Man comics got to have a rough moment in it, or somebody's got to, the Punisher's got to shoot somebody in the head, and it's got to be, oh my gosh, it's not a terrible thing. It's the same sensationalism of anything, and it's all a matter of how it's written and drawn.
And that's the saddest thing about, I think, America in a lot of ways, and this is a whole other aesthetic thing, but like when I started to see people dress up like The Walking Dead, like a zombie with guts and eyeballs and blood and everywhere. And I remember as a kid, remember those costumes you buy in a box and you could be Frankenstein? Yeah, there you go. Like that was about the level of horror you could go when we were kids, right?
Of course.
Now you literally can be shitting and pissing and a chainsaw through your head. And I'm like, what is going on? Like that was for those fucked up movies you saw in the 80s. Now we walk around and violence is it's fine. You don't even blink. The minute you do anything sexual, though, you go to jail. You know what I'm saying?
We are a strangely desensitive culture. And, remember that there was a controversy in the Bat Penis comic over a flaccid penis.
That's right.
Again, that just an important term is a flaccid penis because there was nothing overtly sexual about the paddle. It was a man descending into madness, and the shadow of a man's penis was more than anyone can handle. And it was stupidity by the company to know that they are Warner Brothers company, and someone's going to say something if you can see it. It was poor editing, and it was a terrible decision. And the worst thing that ever happened, you got the controversy and it sold out, but no one ever talked about? The comic book, the contents, the story.
I
The
remember
whole
talking
thing
to
we're
Brian
supposed to be
Azzarello
talking
about that, and he was so bummed out
Yeah,
by what had happened.
right. He's telling the story of Batman killing the Joker and why it would be the worst thing ever. But you don't get to read that because it's about a shadow of a flaccid penis.
Right, right. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And it
So
ruined the
what?
whole Black Label line. The Black Label
So
line came out that was the first Black Label comic, and it
that's
gave
right.
them this weird kind of trajectory. And instead of us having years of really cool adult style DC comics, back to what you were saying before, which is if you're putting it on the title and we know that there's something that has to go to a different audience than the audience who've grown up with it, well, that's how you keep your lifetime comic fans.
Mm-hmm.
The guys, all of us in this room grew up with, we keep talking about, our superhero comics from our youth, but somewhere in our late high school and college era, we found all the other comics.
Mm-hmm.
Found our Love and Rockets, and we found our Harvey P. Cards and our Crumbs and our Roberta Gregory's and Pete Begg and Dan Clowes and fill in the name of your favorite Scott Russo. And that's how I found you. You were in the world of all indie comic guys. Why were you any different? You and when I first saw your comic books, you and Keyhole comic books, why were they any different than Dan Clowes' comic books? They were indie comics done by an indie guy from that era. All that stuff, that era of 90s was so fucking exciting for independent comic books because it was all fresh. And it was fresh for me personally because I was of the age to discover hate, to discover Love and Rockets, discover any of these comic books. So now the goal was to get the kids from, you would call college age. What are they into? What are they like? What can you do that can talk to them that they become the next group of guys who read these things? Because somewhere along the line, someone goes, all right, Dr. Doom's going to lose. I'm pretty sure he's going to lose at the end of this comic book, and I'm a little bored of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they go away. They only go away if you go back to, take the whole conversation back to a half hour ago, train your customers. Let them grow up with you. One of the guys, kid Nick, who's shopping in the store, who's now buying Richard Sala original art, who I knew since he was a teenager, you just had to show him the stuff. He just needed to know who a Dan Clowes was. He was a key collector when I first met him. He bought all of the proper Kirby's. And I love all that stuff. But he needed to find the thing to keep him in comic books. He's my customer still. I didn't lose him. I could have lost him when he just said, I don't want to buy any of these fucking first appearances of this or that. No, he discovered EC comic books. Then he discovered Johnny Craig. He's always buying all the black and white things. Look at these lines. Yeah, look at these lines. That's the whole hook of what we do here. The whole thing is to get you guys in and to point out how fucking great this stuff is. Even from the great lines from the genius of Gilbert Hernandez to Sal Buscema. It's all the same shit.
It seems like
speak to different parts of your belly.
It seems like there's no shortage of I say kids, but not children, but to some extent there's probably children doing it, but there's no shortage of younger folks making comics. Why is there a shortage of younger folks buying comics? Is it an economic thing? Is it
well, it's definitely an economic thing. It's a big part of it. Comics are always, that goes there is, that's the biggest gateway as far as I'm, the big gatekeeper than anything is that, 2 comics is $10.
Yeah.
$10 lunch. $10 is the kid's Uber ride home. It's buying their partner a slice of pizza, 2 slices of a Coke. That's I used to go to gyms back in the 80s when he was in Eldingville. I would, if I had a whole $20 in the 80s on me, 10 were for comics, $3 was for the gauntlet machine, $2 was for the Sicilian slice and the Coke, and the rest was for the bus, there and back. And that was your $20. You saved that $20 up for 2 weeks to go to the comic shop. You didn't eat lunch. You saved your lunch money, whatever bullshit you did to get your comic money. The problem also was, and it's never going back, was when I went to high school, the place I'd get bacon, egg, and cheese in the morning had a small comic rack. Not a huge one, but they had enough for me to grab a comic if I needed one. It used to be, hey, I'm in CVS. There's a couple of comics. Here, I'm going to grab a comic. I'm at the ferry terminal. A couple of comics. I'm going to grab a comic. Now, like most things in life and shopping, it's specialties. It's a specialty shop. That's why we still exist. Otherwise, because of the love of fandom is the only reason the comic stores exist. We don't need to exist. People want us to exist. It's like a record store. No vinyl store needs to ever really exist. You can get everything on Discogs. You can get everything everywhere. No, you want to touch it. You want to go. You want to talk to the guys in the place about it. Hey, there's 4 guys with the record in your hand. You go, yo, man, when I got that record, oh my God, you found one of those? How much do you want for it? Yeah, you know, any of these things, you know, the bar without the booze.
How do you keep a store busy 7 days a week when there's just new comics day?
You pick your days. Meaning, you know, we know that Monday, Tuesday are going to be slow, but Tuesday gives us a chance to get all the books ready, the pulls ready, all the stuff. Maybe Monday we'll get a special thing. You know, one of the things about the comic store is you amass all this shit for the right person. So when I get a box of Dennis the Menace comics or Hot Stuffs and Harvey's, maybe take me 8 months to a year to sell them. But a guy's going to walk in and go, you got Harvey's? I'm going to pull this box out, and it's going to be 50 Harvey's, and he's going to buy 30 of them. Dell Comics. Once a year, a Dell Comics guy comes, a Charlton comic guy comes. And that goes for any indie line. That guy who likes Bill Griffith. You know, Bill Griffith put a new book out last year. It's a good book, but this guy might have grown up on Zippy, and Bill Griffith's got a new book. Oh, shit. Brought Box Brown. Box Brown every 2 years puts out a cool book. If the minute I saw you the Cannabis book, did you read his Andre the Giant book? Did you read the Tetris book? Now there's a line. You know, it's the click and the way to keep going. You know, as creators, you got to find your hook that can find somebody. Look at a guy like John Backdorf. You know, the first hook was a God-given one. He was friends with Dahmer. My friend Dahmer happens because he went to high school with this guy. It's a story like no one else. Trash started off as a story of a summer of being a trash man, and then went, oh, I have to make this a graphic novel. Let me do the history of trash when I'm doing it. His dream book was to do that 4 Dead in Ohio book. Yeah. You know, Ohio resident and a journalist and all these, you know, political journalist, all these things. He does one of the most in-depth books about it. And the joke of jokes, it's now the most timely book around now, isn't it? You know, and he's going to be announcing his new book next year. So, you know, he finished it, you know, like the Abrams meetings happen this week. They're not allowed to announce. They talk to Tony. They're not allowed to tell me what it is, but he's got a book coming this year. You know, okay, and that's now become his hook. He's got Abrams now publishing as his publisher. Every 2 years, he seems to get a book out. He's got either timely or thing that works in his hook, and that's enough for him to work. Because he's also a stylized artist. You know, he's not like one of those, oh, look at his art. It's a beaut. No, it's this weirdo art thing that he's been perfecting as a style for years, and that works, you know. And you Dino, as an artist, 100% have that.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 of your lines and be like, that's Dean's art. That looks the way it, you know.
I mean, I had that relationship with Vertigo for 3 graphic novels, basically, right? And I was hopscotching between doing superhero and then doing autobio or other people's memoir type stories.
Well, I tell you, now's the time to approach him again. I think one of the greatest crimes in comic books was when they took Vertigo out.
Yeah,
you built a product that goes to every point I made earlier about what happens when you grow up. When you grow up, these are for you. And you know it's for you, and it's right from the get-go. So even if the inkling of the storyline gets it for you, it's for you. It's not for 12-year-olds. You're not, quote, reading down. I never felt like a reading down when I was reading an old comic book, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah. No, there's this level, and, you know, in fact, it may be now it's reading up for you. You might have a couple things that I have to, oh, what does that mean? I never heard of that. You know, any of these things that perplex you from reading a book, you know.
I think what my the wall I hit with publishers is that often they don't give you enough of an advance, at least for a guy who lives in Brooklyn, New York. And so, like, I can't, like, I used to be able to just squeak by. The last job I was able to squeak by on was Webtoon, which paid me to create something I owned. In other words, they didn't own it. They didn't want to put it in print either. And I made a relationship with Image to publish the first 2 seasons of Red Hook. And then I put the kibosh on it. And then I did 4.5 seasons that I got paid and made a living off of, you know, doing Red Hook, a webcomic, right? That you can go read for free right now. But I want to put it out as an omnibus. But I feel like, I don't know if I've aged out or maybe they just weren't interested, but like they just don't give you enough of an advance to work on a project that takes 1.5 years, and then you hope for the best.
This seems to come one of my very close friends and also one of Vito's close friends, Jeff Howell, is in the industry, a letterer, designer, and you know, he's been doing it for the same 30 years as everyone else here, and that's his same complaint. It's not that like I get to work, I do all this thing, but there's a lot of times where it's like you don't want to pay me for X amount of months. That doesn't really work for me eating and living and real life.
Right.
So it's the fine line. I tend to I always give Marvel and DC a harder time than a company like Scholastic, even though Scholastic has just as much backing. But there's a world of a real advance, or I always Jeff with line always was, I handed in the work, give me my voucher, or I handed in half the work, give me half the voucher. You know what I mean? Like there's got to be a mid ground here, and I've always felt like Marvel and DC's old school cheap practice of like, well, we pay you this month is like, if you give someone a 3-month leeway, you're going to get a better product, and you have a chance of never ever being late. And I understand you can't give this to everyone in the industry. You can't get, Nick Purpura's first drawn comic book can't be put in advance. But a lot of y'all put a lot of time in, and your editors should know how you can perform. And don't get me started on quote the superstars, because the greatest publishing that DC ever did for me as a retailer for a monthly comic book was Kevin Smith's Green Arrow. Comics sold like 400 copies a month for 16 months because they put 6 in the can because he was notoriously late. Why was he late? Because he's a fucking movie director.
Yeah.
And this is a little fucking side project. But if you pay the movie director the money he deserves, and in that case, Phil Hester, I'm pretty sure, got paid on time for all that, we got a monthly comic book at the highest level of product from both writer and artist. My customers went nuts over it, and it came out monthly. There's a program with monthly comic books. You can program 4 Batman comics a month, but for them to work, they need to come out 1 a week. Because the minute 3 Batman comics come out 1 week, people get overwhelmed and quit. They don't want to read that much Batman this week. They wanted to read 1. Week 1 should be absolute Batman. Week 2 should be Batman. Week 3 should be Detective Comics. Week 4 should be comic of your choice. But monthly comics don't work like that anymore. Things don't come in time. Guys get late. This got late. The letters are late. This didn't get sent out to the print until then. The answer is to publish less of that comic book, not less comic books. Because for every Batman you took off the table, you could do dialects for Hero. You could do Demon. You can do Lobo. You can do, and they're bringing a lot of the stuff back. But again, all these things that at one point we all became fans of because it was brand new and it was for us and it was new. So if the kid back to how do we get the kid of today in? Well, hey, it's number 1. He's starting. There's no other title. No, this is the one. Oh, okay, let me try it. Booster Gold, who we all kind of laughed at in the years, now has bizarre beloved people who love it because they got from issue 1, and then it went to Just League International, and that got fun and funny, and they liked this, and they were in on ground level. It wasn't their dad's cat character. It wasn't this character. So back to the superhero thing. Kids want this thing that's not there. They want to be on ground level. They want to be there. It's then the impossible task of finding the hook. What is that hook? I sell them. I don't write them.
So using Pinnacle Comics' Summit universe, whatever, like I think that's what they're attempting to do, is kind of getting into that space. I don't know these people. I know maybe I've met 1 or 2 of the guys, but in general, I don't know this crew. The
problem with this to me is not this first thing. The first thing is a great idea. First, we get everybody's characters together. Everybody's characters get more weight. There's, I know when Vito did it with Midnight Tiger and all that with Stray, that's a good idea. Midnight Tiger is another comic people like and enjoy and comes out. Ray's an excellent creator. All Ray's people look at Stray. All the Stray people look at Ray. That all works. It's good. It's what's next. Everything's got to have a plan. Unless you're doing like you do. I'm doing my universe with me so I can keep track of it and keep handling it, then you can do whatever you want. But if all these guys are doing something, meeting once doesn't do something. Having repercussions that in 6 months there's a reason for these characters to meet again, and for all that was the beauty of Marvel Comics. First, it's Spider-Man seeing Thor in the background, but now he's got to deal with Thor. Or you're dealing with he sees Captain America. Captain America's trying to stop Spider-Man now. Oh, well, but no, but I'm a big fan. No, well, you're a bad guy, and all those things. When you read all those Ramirez, I'm not even talking about the Ditkos where they're created. No, Iceman comes and tries to stop him. Black Widow comes and there's a thing. There was no real reason for those characters to meet up, but there was, and now we have our shared universe. So like the idea, and with all indie creators, I want everybody to be successful. So it's one of those. I hope these guys knock it out of the park with this.
There was
the other problem is I might not see this because if it's a Kickstarter, it may take a long time to get to me.
Yeah,
exactly.
There was a word that we used to use a lot when I worked at Hamley's, and it was perennial. What, in your mind, defines a perennial?
The perennial, or you can use the other retailer one, which is evergreen, meaning I get one, I sell one, I get one, I sell one. Killing Joke is a perennial. Year One is a perennial, and there could be modern ones. Last Ronin is currently for TMNT. Comic sells as good as any book that's ever sold for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Everybody heard that this was this fantastic special thing, and they want in on it. So a new perennial can happen at any time. Perennial, Invincible and Walking Dead. Now, there's a what I think Brian brought the term up in one of his book reviews. But there's also a thing you can do as a book dealer, not having to be stuck with everything, is do what's called the hammock effect. You always need volume 1. Whatever the series is, you need volume 1 because people want to start somewhere. You may need 2, and you may need 25 for the guy who's been buying them every month and he wants the newest one. But boy, that volume 13 could sit on your shelf for 10 years. Because guy's going to get to 1 to 25. He may get to 1 to 25. Did he go on 1 through 25? He's buying all 25 from you. You don't know all these things. But to be have a successful series, you need that beginning because Vito heard that Pluto was a good manga. Well, fuck, you don't have one. I can't read this. Even the kids who were obsessive as a kid, you have Epic Collection Spider-Man #1. Why do they want that? It's got Amazing Fantasy 15 in it, the first comic. That's the place to start if you want to. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big part of what are you planning to do with your book? Are you planning this to be an OGN that we can just read this and never read it again? Is it an OGN that can maybe have 2 or 3 more parts, but we finish this part here and then we can go back to it and there's a reason to tell more story? Or is this a sequential thing that's going to go on for as long as I can make it go on? Back to the Savage Dragon. He could have stopped Savage Dragon 15,000 times. He found another idea not to and a reason why to enjoy doing it. Smart enough to take a couple of breaks through the year so he doesn't burn himself out and put out shitty titles. I mean, 2 of my favorite writers on this stuff, both Kirkman and Garth Ennis, both talk about, oh no, I knew it was time to hit the end. With Garth, it was Preacher with Salvation. He said, "Oh no! I did that Salvation storyline. I got to get to the end now." Highlander, Huey, and the boy stuff. Huey's going home and reflecting and thinking about the girl and all the situation and getting into a situation there. So once they go back to the title from that, no, the boys ends. The things he's been building, all these things get to the end. And Kirkman said when he decided to suddenly end The Walking Dead, he was like, I finished the storyline and I'm trying to think of what should happen next. It's like, I'm trying to force another line here. This is the ending. I have this already planned. Let's do the time jump. Let's go. So
endings are important. The end is important
for modern crowds more than ever, because that becomes the quote movie. The quote becomes the book. And if you look at even the best of the modern Marvel or DC books, the Mr. Miracle book, Tom King, 12 issues and it's done. They're making an animated series out of it. Marvel Vision by Tom King, 12 issues, the whole story's told. Yeah, they brought the Viv character back and other titles like Champions and whatever, and you can read on about those characters. But if you finish that book, you never have to read another one again. Avengers vs. Aliens, this future thing, cool, whatever. These things have a spot. And what is really penetrated, going back to the Vertigo days, Why the Last Man? Beginning, middle, end. Any of the Rick Remender books, Deadly Class, Seven to Eternity, Black Science. These things opened up a can of worms, got you through your voyage, and had an ending. This is it. This is the end of it. I'll go with Kieran Gillian. He did Die, which is one of my favorite comic books. It's the D&D cartoon and Jumanji mix. Kids getting sucked in the game and having to go back in to rescue the friend. They finish it. They did Die Reloaded this year. Didn't ever have to happen, but man, I liked comic enough to read the new one. And he's going through the whole situation again. Die put out 4 24 issues, 4 trade paperbacks, single issue trade paperbacks. They're getting collected now in a compendium, so he doesn't have to keep keeping books in print. And with getting the compendium, well, there's a new comic. So now I can, as a retailer, I can push the comic that I love already, which is done in one. So if you finish, I feel like I've satisfied you as a customer and myself. And then, oh, look, there's a new one. You know, if you want to look at a mirror on how to do great things, you know, the problem with these guys, a lot of these situations is having the buzz in the name is, you know, look at Brubaker and Phillips. They can do any style they want. We're going to do criminal. Okay, we'll do criminal. You want to do a pulp comic? Let's do pulp. Okay, you want to do this? Let's do this. You want to do?
I mean, there are definitely some creators, especially, you know, like Brubaker and Phillips. I'll buy anything they do. Like, they're definitely creators or solo creators as well. Do you feel, how's Saga doing? Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. How's that doing these days?
He has unfortunately taken the brunt of being out of feature. He went and did all the TV and movie things. I still don't understand how all these things didn't penetrate. Why The Last Man's one of the greatest stories ever. Paper Girls is immensely satisfying when you get to the end. Cliff Chang's one unbelievable artist. It's a beautiful comic. And the shows didn't penetrate. And during this period, it killed the Saga momentum. Now, do I think the Saga momentum will continue? I think Saga will, if he sticks the landing like all good creators, all of those people will come back. It will become one of those great things. But now that he's in the middle, I'm seeing the slowest sales I've seen of the title yet, including the old material, because, boy, I've been pushing it on everyone for years. It's like, yeah, I have that. And even then, I think a lot of the people who did the catch-up during COVID, and they bought 8 books, and they bought the compendium, they read it, then they were like, okay, where's the next book? And you're like, oh, you got 6 months for that. Like, oh. And then that comes out, and they're like, this is cool. What's the next one? It's like 6 to 8 months. And these are people these guys want it like a new comic. You know, they want to walk in, buy volumes 1 to 25 and leave one a month till it's done. Now,
so what you're saying though, is it feel like there's just like, I think the most interesting comics are either superhero in all the genres, which actually is all genres, I think, is superhero. Western, crime, romance, science fiction, it's all in superhero, okay?
Well, and then I'm going to throw that term out for a second, because I had a friend years ago who was a girl who used to read comics, and Kate hit me with a thing when I talked to her about like a superhero comic. She went, I don't read adventure comics.
Oh.
And that's a term that goes a little farther to me than superheroes, because you're right.
I think you're right.
Because Saga is an adventure comic.
Well, what about action comics in a way?
Just the same thing. Action.
It's about the same, right?
They are, Russ. That's what I'm saying.
But you're right. Adventure comic. That's great. I love that term better. You know,
me too. Because superheroes don't hold the thing. Right. Doc Savage to Feral the comic, to any of these things.
Right.
Heroic thing. It is an adventure. We're going to do action and adventure. It doesn't. Yes. If you shoot the beams,
it covers it all.
It's a gun. Yeah. You're a fucking mystery guy. You're still adventure. You know.
Yeah. I love it. So I was gonna say the other side, the flip side though, is memoir, is autobio, is
drama,
personal comics,
slice of life.
Wait, what did you say?
Slice of life.
He said slice of life. I said just talking comics.
Yeah, talking comics.
just nothing but dialogue. But we're gonna shut down here in a few. But I wanted to find out, Nick, what is your favorite comic that you can sell no matter what the situation is? Like, you can just put in someone's hand and with conviction.
That's a tough one. It matters. There are a couple that I always kind of go to. I go to, for the serious person, like I don't really like comics, or arty kind of person, it's Mysterious Polyp. Mysterious Polyp from Dave Mazzucchelli is one of the. If you can't recognize the visuals in that being stunning, then you're not going to like almost anything we do here. You know what I mean? Because again, Dave Mazzucchelli is my favorite, because that's one of my all-time favorite graphic novels. But then I can show you Daredevil Born Again or Batman Year One. I mean, he's doing that. And this is going to be high praise. I attribute to him to being like a guy like John Coltrane. Early in John Coltrane's career, and she found he's playing all these amazing things. But as a music major, they're in key, they're in perfect. They're like, again, it's one of those things you've got to practice really hard to play giant steps the right way and get all the bits and what have you, proving his technical wizardry and all that stuff. later in his career, and he's doing, his astral stuff and even Love Supreme stuff. It's all out. It's all these things, but you can't tell him he's out because he knows how to play in.
Yeah.
And that's an important distinction here, is that once you know how to do in, out can also work. And Mazzucchelli, Batman Year One and Born Again are the pinnacle of comic book superhero comics. And Asterios Polyp is this fucking art comic that I love just as much.
And Rubber Blanket is awesome.
Well, Rubber Blanket needs a proper.
It needs a proper collection. Absolutely.
I have my banged up old copies I found in the basement of the store when I first started working there.
My answer to that, I know you didn't ask, Vito, but when people ask me, and I think we've mentioned this before, like my top 3 comics that I'll say All-Star Superman, because it's the best 12 issues of Superman comics I've ever read.
The Bizarro issue is maybe one of my favorite.
20 years, that book. That book is 20 years old.
What?
Month.
Oh,
that's insanity.
Yeah, that's insanity.
Yeah. But go ahead.
The second one I bring up because I think it's perfection, and it's a done in one. As much as I'd love to say Preacher, which is awesome, but like let's bring it down a little bit. I would say Scalped. Go read Scalped. I think it's one of the best written.
The Wire. My pitch for that to you when it came out used to be, if you like The Wire, it's The Wire on an Indian reservation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
then the third one could be I like to throw in a wrench. I'd say like Jack Kirby's OMAC, just because why not, right?
But Scalped is very much important to what I think the concept of, even when I'm saying Vertigo and creators like yourself to do. Scalped is something I can sell to someone. Here's this complete thing. You're going to be rewarded. You're going to be rewarded for your time. The answers about the Indian reservation, the FBI, why they're there, what they're doing, what everybody's function was there, is answered at the end of those books, which is like any great 2-hour movie or novel. It's satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think that if you ever, the older crowd of comic book fans, that's what they need.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to embark, they're going to bring me on this journey of this concept that you have in your head, I want this at the end. I want it to be completed. I want to be, even if I don't agree with the endings, or I don't like who you killed, or I think that was hokey, whatever, I still feel the satisfaction of getting to the end. And I very much, like you said with the Saga thing, well, Saga will now be redefined when it hits that point.
When it hits that, exactly.
Again, years ago, someone did a review of, it was in Comics Journal, I'll say early 2000, I think it might have been year 2000, of like the greatest superhero comics or non-fanographic comics. It was in the Comics Journal of like what they thought the best comics were. And they had like the Spider-Man 1 through 39, the first 102 FFs. They were doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
And he put on the bottom, I'm omitting Preacher because Preacher has not ended yet. And if he hasn't stuck the ending, then why am I going to praise this as the greatest thing ever? It's Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, if they had stuck the ending, we would be talking about it we'd be talking like Sopranos. We'd be talking about it every week, debating it still. But they didn't stick the ending.
I have to ask Nick and you a versus. We're going to take 2 creators, and we've done both of these creators already with me and Dean, separate creator, matchups. George Perez, Jack Kirby. Who do you pick, Nick? If you can only have the work of one of these on a desert island.
It's not fair. It doesn't work because for me personally, you can do a George Perez versus John Byrne.
John Byrne. And it's Dicko and Kirby. Yeah.
Right.
Dicko,
because
Kirby.
Again,
if I had
the choice that I could only look at one for the rest of my life, I apologize to George right now because I fucking love George, and Scott Dumbier is putting out that damn new Teen Titans art edition in the summer, and it's going to take all my goddamn money. I have to live without that. But it would be Kirby in that case because it's Kirby. It's always Kirby. Now, Perez is my favorite of the modern guys. Once you pass 1970s, Perez is my guy. Yeah.
Well, I know that those are 2 your.
But then I'm leaving out Gilbert and Jaime. Then I'm leaving out poor Robert Crumb, and then.
No, those are totally different.
Yes,
like those 2 I'm like, if I had to throw this at Nick, this is the one I want to throw.
So this, and I have 2 more things I want to talk before we. So real quick, so like we mentioned Spider-Man earlier, and Spider-Man comes out every month, just like Fantastic Four and just like I guess Batman and some other comics. And then I mentioned All-Star Superman. I think we all agree like if you're going to hand somebody for the first time a Superman comic, you probably might give them All-Star Superman. I think.
Yeah, the only competitor for that for me is Jim Hanley's favorite, Superman for All Seasons. I think Superman for All Seasons because it's a little easier to digest than
it's
Grant.
true. Yes.
Again, Grant Morrison has never ever not come up with an amazing concept.
Yeah.
They may not have been always the best comics, and I may not have loved every comic, but you can never deny that every one of his concepts are above and beyond, and that's why All-Star Superman works, is because every issue is an homage to the greatness of Superman. There's a Jimmy Olsen issue, there's a Bizarro issue, there's a Lois with Powers issue. There's Superman, you understanding who Superman is and saving the girl from suicide and how he can't level. Superman having the regret of losing one person after saving 3 of the 4. Those are all amazing concepts there that each one of them could have been a year's worth of storytelling, but Grant is above and beyond on the world of creativity. So
So, and actually, just to go back for a second, I might have not said, I think the trifecta might be, for me, All-Star Superman, Scalped, and maybe Planetary, Warren Ellis and John Cassaday.
Oh, that's a beauty. It's a hell of
that's a great trifecta.
Cassaday, rest in peace. I mean, he was just as good as they came. I just remember those comics coming out and going, look at this guy's art. Oh, my God.
Incredible. Incredible. But so, and I actually really loved Warren Ellis and who drew it? Next Wave.
Joe, you can't even, you
Stuart Immonen.
Yeah, you can't get me started on Warren. I mean, I was Dave Oteya. It's unfortunate that his career went the way it went, but that doesn't change that. I think Desolation Jones is an excellent comic.
Oh, it's great. Great.
James Williams, I mean,
Nick.
Unbelievable.
Nick, but so cocky with me.
But I will say that, so my question though is, if you're the retailer that's getting someone into Spider-Man, can they pick up the latest issue of Spider-Man and get into it?
Probably not. Probably not. You probably have to figure out the design. Usually what I tend to do if 10-year-old, or let's even say 10, let's say 19-year-old Dean Haspiel walks in my store and says, hey, I'm into Spider-Man. I'll bring him over and I'll try to see what the most inviting for the month is. Are they putting a one-shot out? Is there a mini-series with him and Deadpool or him and Wolverine or something that the person can penetrate? Because the problem right now is so many monthly comics are designed for, God fucking hate Marvel, that they 5-issue trade paperbacks that I might be well sending you a part 3 of a comic book with a little bit of a explanation in the back. One of the things you do wrong in a comic book is there's no exposition in the beginning of a comic book, or worse, there used to be a little blurb on the top of every comic book that said, bit by a radioactive spider, loss of his Peter Parker's out there doing
Uncle
this.
Ben.
And it gives you, hold on, do I have a stupid
but do you think that Marvel and DC should put out like 10 best of books of Batman, Spider-Man, not 1 through now, not collect them all.
They do those. They kind
of do those. Like they're the greatest stories of, but that's questionable.
Well, Penguin Random House tried when they first got Marvel. They put out a Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and an X-Men book that had select stuff from all their early stuff with essays inside, and it was a really cute book, and people didn't buy it.
Right.
I think one of the things with I think the big thing that I love this year, and I think we have better traction than a lot of stores, I loved all those replicas. Those replica editions. Suddenly they put out Fantastic Four issues 1 through 12 this year in replica editions. Kids will never be able to afford this. Adults like us could barely afford to buy any of those originals. And what it does is it tells a kid, this is where you start, kid, and it's $4. You didn't have to buy a $50 graphic novel to see if maybe you liked old Fantastic Four.
Right.
And when we were kids, there was Marvel Tales, Marvel's Greatest Comics. There was the summertime annuals from DC. All these got Blue Ribbon Digest. All these things had places where you could read the best comics, and you knew they weren't the originals, but they were enough for you to get a little up on board. Maybe I do like this X-Men thing. Hey, just right. I have an X-Men 137 in my store right now. It's $5 comic. Somebody's heard about the death of Phoenix. They could walk up and buy that comic, go home and read it. Buy all these. Otherwise, the old answer was $50 or $100 on the wall, or a $40 to $50 trade now. You guys are missing the point of this has got to go in my pocket. This has got to be a cheap thing we can throw in our bag. Because the other option is they read it online, which again, I don't dislike. If a kid reads a comic book online, he knows what my comic store is.
Mm-hmm.
A comic store is some colorful place that you don't know what to do with unless you've read a comic book
Mm-hmm.
or seen a panel and said, hey, I like that. And I don't care if it comes from webtoons. I don't care if it comes from a digital comic that came with the toy you bought. I don't care if it's you're torrenting them and trying them out. You know, one of the things I learned for years is, you know, Mike Gilbert, who Vito knows,
Yeah.
you know, well, customers for 20 years and we're all buddies. We hang out with them outside the store. One day we're talking about comics. He's talking about Walking Dead. I'm like, do you not buy Walking Dead from me? I almost feel like I'm a little offended. He's like, I don't own that. It's like, I buy it and I read it digitally. And it's like, oh, the guy, and, you know, back to the point. This guy wants to read all the comics in the world, but he can't have them all in the house, and he can't afford to pay for them all.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have it on Marvel Unlimited or Image Unlimited or DC Unlimited or any of these digital platforms, you're going to read a comic book. You're going to read a comic book you like enough to go, I got to fucking have that.
Mm-hmm.
I have Fantastic Four 1 to 102 in my house in trade paperbacks. You're the guy who buys the Marvel Masterwork Marvel 2-in-1s.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
me.
look what I have next to me. Marvel 2-in-1.
There you go, baby.
Too. I have to have them too, you know.
Of course.
And I don't like the hardcover. I wanted the soft cover.
Right.
Book 3. There's 3 more to go, and I have all 100 issues and 7 annuals in a book that I can read when I want to read them.
I love it.
That's, you know, that's the magic of what we do. You know, some of these things can get preserved forever, especially in the digital concept. You know, Stray exists. It exists.
Yeah.
It exists. It forever exists. There's no taking that away from anybody. Now get somebody, let's get people to read them.
Yeah.
That's the point.
So we've learned so much in this small amount of time about, I almost want to ask the question.
You can't get me to shut the fuck up.
No, I love it. I love it. And I was going to say, to ask you the question, like, what made you want to become a retailer? I think it's just evident in the way you talk about comics.
I was going to say, I don't think there's any denying that he. I don't know that I can say this about any other retailer, but the love that he has for comics is evident.
Yeah,
I do love them, but always remember, I took this job because Jim used to let me go on tour.
That's right.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. I want the people who may not know you, which is not. I'm sure most people know who you are. Good God. But I want to talk briefly about your music, like what you create.
Oh,
a little bit about that.
I've been playing music since I'm 12 years old. So I've, been in bands. I used to be in bands called Mudfoot, a band called the Headlocks, a band called the Headquarters. I was in Dennis Kalo and the Change. I was in bands. I was in a band with Ronnie called Tryptophan for years. They're still rolling, but I'm not playing with those guys these days. There's not enough time in the day for me and Ron to do more things than we do together. But no, I've played my whole life, and I'm, oh God, I'm getting low battery here. No, it's okay. We're cut off. No, I'm still regularly playing and writing, and probably have something ready to produce to show the world again in about a year.
Awesome.
I'm slowly doing stuff on my own right now, because since I had a baby, the first 3 years have been, he's finally a normal, crazy lunatic, and I can get back to doing a little more things besides, having a lack of sleep and being a dad. Vito will tell you all about those.
Yeah. I will say, though, that Nick Purpura does have one comic book credit to his name.
That's right. I do.
We co-wrote a Scooby-Doo musical that was
I did
put into a Scooby-Doo comic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's always, people always do that. Like, so what do you want to do in comics? I was like, read them. It was always the joke is that everyone always came in the comic store and they'd work for a little while because they had aspirations being a writer, an artist, a letterer. They had so many guys who've come through Joe Frontieri just put a good graphic novel out. That's again, all our guys who have, through the years who have to do this. Again, I liked comics a lot. Ronnie got me the job, and I could go on tour and play music and do things, and but I deep down, I read my first comics, 1978, 79. Grandfather brought me home a bunch of Treasury editions that I still have. They're all beat to shit, but they were from my grandpa. It just started a lifetime of love for it, and I never quit. I never quit in high school. I never had that. Like I was too cool for comics. Comics were always there, and again, why would I want to give up fucking enjoyment in life? Life's rough, man.
There's the rub right there.
Again, life is rough. Read a comic book. jxucomicbooks.com. Where art and literature meet.
All right. Well, let's put a pin in it. Nick, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I love you both. You know that.
Thanks,
like,
Nick. Love you
like
too,
Dave
man.
said, there's so much that you can glean, and there's so much more to, like, you know, we're gonna have to have you back at some point because there's so much more to say. And I think, you know, anybody watching this will learn something, you know, like actually, you know, absorb it and learn something. So thank you very much. I
You're
love
welcome,
you,
brother.
Death. You are, you know, we're cut from the same cloth.
Absolutely. You are my brother.
Yep, same here.
I know it.
Love
All
you
right.
guys. And we should
Love
bring
you.
Ron Hill too
Yeah,
into the
next time
conversation.
bring Ronnie. Ronnie is successfully fucking beat cancer, and there's
Yeah.
nothing better than me being able to say that shit, man.
Yeah.
He was a hell of a fucking fighter. You know, old Ronnie picked it up.
You know, I say this in jest, but I say it also in love. You know, you never thought Ronnie would ever win a fight in anything because he's so passive aggressive.
I know.
But God bless him.
Man, the hair's coming back. It's good.
Yeah.
You know? He just didn't get the benefit. You're supposed to lose a ton of weight when you get the fucking cancer. He looks exactly the same. He looks great, you know. So,
oh man,
I love it.
On that note, I love you all.
On that note,
bye, guys.
Have a good night.
Guys.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will see you next week. See you, Dean.
Good night.